Well, Mike, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Russ.
It's our big 5-0.
It's 1 year.
1 year.
50 episodes, not including the interviews. And yeah, we've been doing this for 1 year. We recorded our first ever adult music podcast entitled Hello World exactly 1 year ago today, February 11th, 2021. Today we are recording on February 11th, 2022, and here we are.
We've got to stop seeing each other like this.
Well, we don't see each other often like this because we are live.
We're face-to-face in the mountain lair.
Face-to-face in the mountain lair.
Today. Yeah.
We're in the R part of the R&M studio.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Imagine that. Who knew? It really went by fast, didn't it? I feel like we just started this.
And, well, on average, we've done 6 recordings per episode as our standard. A couple of times we've had a few more.
Yeah.
The first couple episodes, a few less, but that's going to mean, what, almost
50 times 6.
Yeah. It's a lot of CDs.
300, that's like 300.
Yeah.
Albums that we've heard.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a pretty good year of listening.
That is. Not only that, but both of us have heard a lot more than those 300.
Oh, sure.
We've been listening to other things as well that just didn't get on the podcast. And then there's
a few other genres that we might check out.
A few other genres, there's that as well. So here we are, a year later, just as broke, but with that much more experience and whatever.
We got to get this audience growing a little more. It's gradually grown over the year.
It has. Thank you, listeners, who were with us for the first year.
Around the world, listeners to adult music.
Yeah,
that's who we are. Music for the mature mind, bringing each week new releases, relatively new in classical and jazz, and stretching those genre boundaries a little bit. We're flexible. We get in some world influences, and we cover new releases, but the periods of music in classical can be from any time. And in jazz is an American original music form, but a lot of the music we talk about comes from all around the globe. So we try to keep it international. And
we do what we can.
See what's going on from all corners, all places around the globe. That's right.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of the anniversary, as far as listeners are concerned, our first anniversary of our first ever podcast, it was uploaded on February 15th. So that's going to be this coming Tuesday. So a lot of you, we'll put this up on the internet on Monday as usual. That'll be Valentine's Day.
Right.
In fact, for some of you in the U.S., for example, it'll be the 13th, February 13th. So Sunday night, Monday morning. But the first anniversary of our first loaded podcast would be February 15th. So drink a toast or whatever you do to celebrate such occasions for us on that day.
We're going to have some toasts. We're starting a little early, not with our traditional official drink of the podcast, Knob Creek single barrel bourbon.
I guess that's for later. Huh?
That's for later. But we've got some nice one. We're starting out with
beer.
Some beer. That's right. The premium malts.
Or as we say in New York, beer.
Beer.
Yeah.
And we'll go on to, we got some nice grass-fed steaks for later.
Oh, very nice. It's a big celebration here at the R&M studio, the Mountain Lair.
And we're going to take some commemorative photos too,
which we will share with you.
That's right. We'll put those up. And also, we'll add those to our new Facebook page.
Yeah, we have a Facebook page now.
We do. Anyway, this is episode 50. And for our listeners, I'd like to remind you, if you go to the episode description on whatever platform you're listening to us on, all the music we'll talk about should have links to Spotify and Apple Music, so you can check it out on streaming and decide if you're interested in purchasing it. At the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music that's available for streaming in one place on Deezer, our preferred streaming platform. You can also follow us on the podcast there too, and check out all of the playlists for every episode. Username is Adult Music Podcast. Now, if you can't see the full description or the links don't work on whatever platform or app you're looking at, please check us out on our host, Podbean. Everything's easy to follow there. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. If you just take another few seconds to give us a ranking or write a review, that helps us get listed in the browsing category recommendations and helps us get new listeners, which we always appreciate. Anything above and beyond that, if you want to contact us directly, we'd love to hear from you with any comments, questions.
And we've heard from a few people. It's kind of always nice to hear from you, all of you.
Yeah, we've heard from a few of the artists that we talk about. And
right, they've been great. They're kind of excited to hear their music talked about in detail.
Yeah. So if you're an artist or just a regular listener, we'd like to know more about our audience. Be happy to correspond with you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. And you can also check us out on our new Facebook page, which is kind of under construction, but all the episodes are there anyway.
We'll eventually get our own web page too. One day we'll get around to this, but not yet. It's just all, this fly-by-night operation we've got going. We're just kind of building around it, and eventually we'll just be this big edifice,
we start with the important things.
The important thing, the music itself,
Talking about the music, the sound quality should be good because we've got the tools for that. And, keep up the good releases and all the other peripheral stuff. We'll work on it as we come, so...
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, we have to start talking our 50th episode and our first anniversary podcast with some sad news of the passing of the American composer George Crumb. Do you know much George Crumb?
I don't know too much about him. I've heard a few of his compositions.
Bridge Records was putting out I think they were trying to do his complete work, so they were doing a lot of them. And I think I've got about 8 volumes of that. I should really look back into it. But George Crumb is most famous for his work Black Angels for Electric String Quartet. When I was in college and I saw the words Electric String Quartet, I had to hear that.
How was that?
It was a Vietnam War kind of protest sort of piece. Okay. And which was pretty much par for the course back then. But it was it's pretty spooky. It's a really kind of it's avant-garde. First of all, it's not for the faint-hearted listeners. So if you're looking to relax in your bachelor pad after work at night, you definitely don't want to put this on. But it's a work worth hearing if you haven't heard it. There's another work, and I can't. Oh man, who was this? Was this Kathy Berberian or John de Gaetani? One of them was the singer on Ancient Voices of Children, released on Nonesuch way back in the day. That's his other really famous work. And the rest, there was a great recording by a pianist that we really love on the Hyperion label, Stephen Osborne.
Oh, yeah.
He did these Christmas works by George Crumb, which really didn't sound very Christmassy, but they were, as you can imagine. He was an avant-garde composer, always in search of interesting sounds, which he got a lot of. I certainly had an ear that gravitated. I have an ear that gravitated towards his music, and so may he rest in peace. We're sorry.
92 or something.
He was 92.
Oh, that's a good run.
That's a good run.
Rest in peace.
Yes, that is a good run. And I guess we'll start hearing some commemorative albums coming out. Maybe this year, maybe next year. That could be cool. We'll have to look out for them.
Look forward to that.
Yeah.
But tonight, we're going to start in the Renaissance.
We're going because we're really to the Renaissance.
Renaissance men here.
We are Renaissance men, aren't we? Okay.
Yeah. Do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Some writing, some music, some talking about music, some cooking.
Maybe we're Renaissance wannabes.
Could be.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually happier to live in the modern period and talking about Renaissance works rather than having lived.
Although, judging by this record, it might not have been that bad. Let's discuss it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is an album called The Florentine Renaissance, and the artists are the Orlando Consort. The Orlando Consort consists of 4 singers. Countertenor Matthew Venner, and you hear a lot of him on this record. He really stands out. Tenor Mark Dobell, tenor Angus Smith, and baritone Donald Grieg. It's spelled Grieig, so it's like the opposite of Grieg. In German, it would be Grieg. I don't know. Anyway, but there it is. He's the baritone. And this is released by the Hyperion label, one of our favorite labels, but you can't hear this on your streaming service. They don't put their records on streaming.
No streaming.
But you can go to their website and sample all the tracks. They give you a 30-second sample, so you're just going to have to trust us on this one. Well, we're going to talk about what we heard. And I would recommend this album, but again, you have to kind of be interested in this era of music, okay, to really want to pick this up. Okay. I didn't really write much about I wrote about the tracks here, but this is basically divided into two parts. The first 6 tracks on this album are from the 1430s to the 1450s. Now, remember, the Italian Renaissance was the first Renaissance. It started before the rest of Europe kind of caught on, and it was really the De Medici family in Florence that really kicked the whole thing off. There was the rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts, all those old Greek myths and the ideas from ancient Greece, mathematics, all this came back. Started the Renaissance, which eventually led to the Enlightenment, which eventually led to basically the Western world that we all live in now. So it all pretty much starts here. Now, this is the Florentine Renaissance. I myself have spent a lot of time in Florence, Italy, and I really gravitated towards this recording because I'm so interested in anything that's going to fill in my understanding of that city and its past. And this certainly does that. Okay, so the rest of the recording, by the way, after track 6, deals with the 1460s to the 1490s and the rule of Lorenzo de' Medici. Lorenzo il Magnifico, the Great, he was really the big mover and shaker in the Medici family. And he commissioned a lot of music and wrote some poems himself that we're going to hear his words on this album too. All right, let's start. The 1430s to 1450s featured the music of Guillaume Dufay, and there's one work by Gilles Binchois on this. Now, these names may not sound very Italian to you, and in fact, they shouldn't because they're not. But in this period, Italy was a musical center. The Baroque hadn't started yet. The Baroque really started in Italy, and that's when you start hearing a lot of these Italian names. But a lot of these composers came from... They were oltremontagni, according to the Italians. They were from beyond the mountains, from Flanders, basically.
Up there.
Yeah, and that's going to include Dufay and I believe Binchois as well. We start with a work by Dufay, and these works were all performed at the dedication of the Duomo in Florence, Santa Maria del Fiore.
Duomo.
The big famous dome of Brunelleschi. That's really so magnificent. Okay, and this was interesting for me because I could imagine what it might have been like. Anyway, track 1, Guillaume Dufay, Nuper Rosarum Flores. Now, this is going to be, by the way, this recording is going to be a combination of sacred or church and secular, everyday song kind of recording. So you have the sacred songs that deal with the Christian stories and the people populating the Christian story. And then you have these secular stories that are often pretty naughty. It's quite a combination.
Those Italians, I'll tell you.
I tell you, you just can't contain those Italians, you know?
It's that naughty, nice continuum.
Yeah,
you
got that.
Balance it out.
Yeah. Okay. Oh God, I had an image there that I'm not going to share. Okay, anyway, Guillaume Dufay first, Nuper Rosarum Flores, which means late roses blossom, and this is combined with a work called Terribilis est locus iste, which one way to say it would be terrible is this place, but when they say terrible, people don't really think of this. The roots of the word terribilis in Latin, it could be terrible and also terrific,
right,
or awe-inspiring. Right. So something terrible is also awe-inspiring.
A degree rather than
it's kind of been reduced to just awful now, but right. Terrible can still mean his terrible, power.
Right.
Which doesn't mean it's bad power. It means it's just awe-inspiring power. Okay, so we can still use it like that too. So awesome is this place, basically. We're going to translate it that way. And he's talking about the inside of Santa Maria del Fiore, which is a sparsely decorated place. It's pretty dark in there. It isn't like one of these places that has like loads of paintings all over the walls, but it does have some, especially if you go under the dome itself. There are loads of frescoes up there, okay, and some on the walls as well. This text draws attention to the golden rose, Rosarum Flores, which was given to Florence by the Pope as a sign of favor back in the Renaissance era. And you can still see it, I believe, today, displayed on the cathedral altar. This was Pope Eugene, who we don't really remember unless you happen to, I guess, live in Florence. You'll probably remember that he was the Pope at the time that the cathedral was dedicated. He's mentioned by name in this tune as well. So there he is. He lives on, even if we don't remember him. The final two stanzas are about the cathedral's dedicatee, the Virgin Mary, Santa Maria, right? They are a plea for her help in gaining forgiveness for sins. The higher voices sing this text, and the lower voices sing Terribilis est locus iste, which is not a different tune, but it's actually just those words repeated over and over again, which are derived from the opening words of the introit chant at the Mass for the dedication of a church. Okay, and they come from, the word awe-inspiring is this place, Jacob said them when he dreams of the ladder, Jacob's ladder, leading to heaven. And he says, after he wakes up, awe-inspiring is this place. So that's where that comes from. This chant also, the chant meaning the whole piece, it's really more of a chant. It has a bit of numerology too. If you go to the Duomo in Florence and you look up, you'll notice that it's an octagon. It's got 8 sides. It's not perfect. It's not round inside. It's kind of based on 8 sides. And the measurement of each section is 28 bracci. Braccio is like your arm length, so it'd be about 2 feet. So each of them is like 28 times 2 feet is 56 feet, I guess, long. So Dufay in this piece has made his this piece into 8 sections of 28 bar segments each. Not like we're going to count them, but they are there. So there's kind of a relationship between the piece and the church itself. Let me see. This particular piece, the Orlando Consort, performs this with a lot of presence and enthusiasm, as they do throughout. This is a pretty enthusiastic group, I have to say. They have good energy, particularly the countertenor voice. The recording is astonishingly clear, which I guess isn't a surprise when you have only 4 voices in this kind of large space. You can hear all the detail extremely well. Which it's essential for polyphonic music that the recording be clear too, because there's a lot of detail, and I'm really been pretty impressed by a lot of the polyphonic music we've been hearing in the last 2 years on this podcast. The lower voices singing awe-inspiring is this place come in with the second verse, so you won't hear them at the beginning. There is lots of melisma on vowel sounds. Melisma, it's a nice word, isn't it? It's when you have a vowel, like you're singing dog and you say do, and that could go on forever, especially if you're singing Italian, which has loads of vowels in every word. It's a very musical language for that reason. That's what they mean by Italian being musical. It has a lot of vowel sounds. Okay.
How do they do that in Polish? That must
well,
be
German
harder,
is the other one,
German,
right? Yeah, because it has lots of consonants.
Right.
It's there was a really funny thing that Robert Greenberg, when he was he did this what do you call it now, the great courses. He has this course, how to listen to and understand great music, and he was talking about the difference between the Italian and German approach to music, and he said Italian wound up being the more conservative musical styles because the Italian language is already very musical. So they figured out how to set the words to music, and they pretty much kept it like that for centuries. Whereas German is not a musical language, and yet you think German is one of the great musical cultures of the world. Well, part of the reason that happened is, well, even vocally, because they had to keep experimenting in order to figure out how to get all the juice out of their language. Now, the thing about instrumental music is it comes from vocal music. It's the ideas that you discover in vocal music generally get applied to instrumental music. So it's sort of an offshoot, really. And he demonstrated the difference between the musicality of Italian and German by saying the names of the languages in their languages. So if you can listen, the word for Italian in Italian is Italiano. Now, we could sing that word forever, couldn't we? Listen to all of those vowels. Italiano, right? And the word for German in German is Deutsch. Not going to get much out of that.
No.
But you're going to have to work really hard. And that's what they did. And then they became the dominant musical culture for in Europe for hundreds of years until really the Second World War just kind of ended everything. Actually, before that, too, the French started to pull us away from that, too, with Debussy and Ravel. They came up with a distinctively French style. Anyway, that's your music lesson for today. A little cultural information for you here. So we're hearing, this is actually a Latin piece, which is it has a pretty good balance between consonant and vocal. By the way, at the other end of the scale is French, which is very vocal heavy. It's got very soft consonants. And
consonants flow with the vowels very easily. There.
Yeah, they melt into, and the French developed a style where the chords will melt into other chords to sort of simulate the French language. So it's pretty interesting. But Italian has like a perfect balance between consonant and vowel. So that's why it sounds so musical to our ears. Okay. By the way, if you listen to the first track, if you listen to the words oratione tua in the fourth verse, listen to the O on oratione. There's a really nice melismatic pattern on that particular vowel. All right, on to track 2, Dufay again. This is a chant sung by, well, it's what's called monophonic. Music lesson number 2. There are really 3 types of approach to vocal music. Or to melodic music: monophonic, polyphonic, and homophonic. Now, monophonic is what people sing when they're at a football game. They're all singing the same note, okay? And they might be singing octaves, maybe. And if they're singing dominants, it's by accident, okay? Or like fifths. It just kind of happens naturally. But they're all basically singing the same thing. As we know, polyphonic is voice against voice. All the voices are doing something different. And homophonic is really what a pop song would be today. You have one melodic line that's really important, and the rest of them are just kind of in the background somewhere, but they're there, okay? So that would be homophonic music where one voice stands out. Here we have a monophonic chant. It's just one vocal line, and that's it. And it's also 3 different texts. Salve flos tusque gentis, vos nunc etrusque jubeo, and viri mendaces. Okay, obviously I don't speak Latin, but I went for my Italian-style pronunciation here. This is also 8 segments of 28 breves. A breve would be the note that comes on the first beat, and it just gets held the length of an entire measure. Okay, so this is also made for the opening of the cathedral. The top voices, this is kind of interesting text. The top voices praise the men of Florence, which today automatically makes it not permissible. But anyway, praise the men of Florence, and a different text sung simultaneously in the second highest voice praises Florence's women. How nice. Yeah, everybody's great.
Sounds equal.
That's the way it should be.
What about...
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
No, let's not get into that.
Okay, that's not
I know what you're going, but they have their place too.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Dufay, the author of the text, he actually wrote this himself and names himself in the last line of the second text. The lower vocal ranges create a darker sound. The tenor sings a fragment of chant over and over again. Viri mendaces means lying men. And they just keep repeating this under these 2 other texts that are celebrating the men and women of Florence. Now, nobody really knows what that means, but the author of the booklet seems to think it may refer, he didn't say it does, but may refer to the enemies that forced Cosimo de' Medici, who was the great Lorenzo's, I think, father or grandfather, into exile. This work is organized by repeating rhythmic patterns called isorhythm. So you're going to hear the same rhythmic pattern over and over again, basically. but they're long enough that you're not going to recognize that it's a pattern because they go on too long. This was developed was brought to its peak by Machaut like over 150 years earlier or so, or 120 years earlier. It's kind of odd to hear the tenor singing only the words "lying men" under all this praise. And listening to this, I was thinking these are the low voices singing this and lying men, and maybe just the lowness of the voices means they're in hell. They're where they belong, underneath, the men and women being praised or something like that.
Could be.
Yeah. Track 3, Du fai salve flos tusque gentis. Oh, I already talked about this one. Sorry. I went ahead. Sorry. Track 2 was Nuper Almos Rose Flores, created for Santa Maria del Fiore. This is the only place this text exists. It's a monophonic chant. Beautiful in its modal scale. Okay, so that was track 2. I just talked about track 3 before. Now we're on to track 4. Du fai vanne mio core. We now have something in Italian. Okay, so this is going to be a secular. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's a lauda. Lauda, as you can imagine, lauding someone. It's praising someone. And these were often sung to some saint, basically, to praise their virtues. And often, as was done in the Renaissance, they were sung to a popular tune. And this one comes from the secular tune, Va-t'en mon cœur, which was a French tune. So this one, let's see, they're often, This is usually sung by a boy with organ accompaniment, but here we have 2 untexted supporting voices substituting for the organ. This recording is all voices. The text was written by Feo Belcari. It's short and uncomplicated. Give it a try. Next we have the only piece on this album by Gilles Binchois, Vanne mio core. And then this is a lauda. And comes from the popular tune Pour Prison, for prison. This often happens. You'll have some bawdy text. It's kind of like blues and gospel, where you have this kind of like sort of naughty text that the music just has the words changed and it's sung in church. Okay, so it works the same way. It doesn't sound the same, obviously. Okay. The words in quotation marks here are the chanson. This lauda should be sung like. So if you're looking at the text booklet, the harmonic and melodic profile of this work is noticeably different than the previous one, Vanne mio core, and it's interesting how the melody in the higher voice can give the work a different tint. Although the singer doesn't change his tone, the countertenor still sounds the same. What's really making this work is the variety of different works that they chose, right? Because they don't really change their approach too much during this album. It does stay interesting, though. Track 6, Du fai, Mirandas parit Haec urbs Florentina, is in a cantilena style, characterized by 2 high voices that intertwine beguilingly above a freely composed tenor that is not based on a chant. They usually were, but not in this case. And again, this one praises the women of Florence. Ben, they really must have been something, because Dante had something for the ladies, for Beatrice. I mean, he wrote a whole... Probably the greatest poem ever written about her.
How were they when you were there?
Inspired by her. Yeah, they were okay. They haven't fallen too far from the ideal being presented here, I have to say. If you look at the paintings of, escaping me now. Any of the paintings in the Uffizi Gallery, just go in there. Botticelli, that's who I'm thinking of. Look at the women's faces in there. They're often blue-eyed and kind of like reddish blonde-haired. This very kind of like light, pale skin. They're just beautiful. So I imagine it would have been a good place to be back in the Renaissance. Why not? Something to look at. Oh, boy.
And sing about.
And sing about, too. Okay, so praising the women of Florence. Okay. Florentina. Okay. The text is probably by Du fai. We're back into Latin, but because it's this kind of work, it starts by praising the women of Florence. But of course, there's someone better than the women of Florence, and that is the Virgin Mother of God, Mary. She's just ideal. She surpasses the others in distinction and body. And so far, the program, I would say, is cleverly planned so that we get different vocal colors out of the ensemble based on the harmony and compositional approach, not necessarily by any change in that they're making. The voices are all appealing, and the countertenor, Matthew Venner, as I mentioned, stands out in the quality of his tone. He doesn't really sound like a lot of the other countertenors we've heard on this program, though he's not a soloist. And please remember, when you're listening to works like this, especially a polyphonic work, all of the voices are equally important.
Right.
So not necessarily the one on top. We're so used to hearing the melody on top of everything else. So we need to make that adjustment. It'll change your mind and your life if you do that. So give it a try. By the way, one or two passing harmonies in this work are fantastically bold, like on one of the vowels on quacumque in the last line. There's some really harsh harmonies in there that we really love. They just kind of happen. Okay, we get to the second half of the program on track 7, the 1460s to the 1490s. Now Lorenzo de' Medici is in the story, as is the monk Savonarola, okay, who after the Medicis were exiled, kind of took over and sort of brought people back to the church or something like that. I don't know how to explain what he did. He preached a lot and inspired a lot of music and wrote some texts himself. The first thing we have are a bunch of carnival songs, and the carnival is like Mardi Gras, basically. It's the day or the few days before Lent begins. And back in these days, Lent was a big deal. You were pretty much fasting for 40 days. Not in any like extreme way, but you weren't eating during the day, basically. And it was a long period of time. So people would just go crazy on the Tuesday, especially before Lent, called Carnevale in Italy. And they didn't just eat a lot and drink a lot, but they caroused a lot.
Oh.
There wasn't going to be much of that during Lent. You had to be a good person, right? And some of these texts are pretty naughty. People must have been really getting it on in Florence at this period. The first piece here is anonymous. It's called Joramai Que Forasone. In this text, a young woman exults after escaping the convent and discarding her habit.
Uh-oh.
One copyist labeled this song as a canzona napoletana, and it is very catchy, noticeably different from the previous works with a more defined rhythm. It's almost dancey, I would say. It's the author of the text is anonymous as well. We have another anonymous text and song coming up, Quando riguardo el nostro viver Rio. This is a lauda for Saint Sebastian, who was a Roman centurion martyred for his conversion to Christianity. You can see, you've probably seen paintings of him. He's got a bunch of arrows in his body. That's Saint Sebastian. If you ever walk into a church and see that image, he was a Roman originally. Okay, well, he always was a Roman, but he just converted to Christianity, which I guess wasn't done then. They were still pagans. Okay.
Not done carousing.
Yeah, this would have been long before. This isn't the Roman, when ancient Rome was still around. Although it was still around here, technically, in Constantinople, but it was about to meet its end. Okay. Okay, so he was. This piece typifies the unadorned music of Florentine religious song in a style suited to amateur singers. All singers pronounce the words together, so it's a monophonic, I guess. The melody has a popular song quality and a noticeable rhythmic profile. Track 9, possibly by Heinrich Isaac, or Isaac. He was Flemish, and he was one of the preferred composers of Lorenzo il Magnifico de' Medici. This might be by him, or it might be an anonymous composition. We're not really sure. It's called Canto dello Zibetto. Now, a zibetto is a civet. And a civet is an animal from the cat family. It kind of has a barred or spotted coat and hunts at night. Okay, and by the way, the Italian word civetta is also used for a prostitute today. So you already had this sort of innuendo going on
Right.
at this time with this word, zibetto. Okay, this piece is Italian's really interesting that way. It's got a lot of really interesting words for well, not civet, not a prostitute. It's a woman who's very alluring, I guess. It's hard. I'm not finding the words for this. Anyway, this piece is missing its upper part in the printed text, and it was reconstructed for this recording. The text is by Lorenzo de' Medici himself. Believe it or not, he must have really been some kind of ladies' man writing things like this. It's a carnival song, and he wrote a lot of these. Here's an example of the sexual innuendo in this song. Ready? This is the English translation. I should have translated myself, because this translation is probably copyrighted, although the Italian wouldn't be. But anyway, it says, one takes a probe about a third of an arm length, blunted so that it doesn't puncture the inside. Ouch. One plunges it in, and it must be completely lubricated. Oh, ladies, you will think it is a sweet delight. Yow.
What year was this again?
1460?
Wow.
Now, if you've ever read Boccaccio's Decameron, there's some pretty naughty stories in that collection as well. So, I don't know. The Catholic Church didn't really get to clamp down on
not enough
the way Italians
Obviously
behaved.
Not enough.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. How about this? Only meat without the bone is pleasing to it. He's talking about the civet animal and another animal as well. But it wants it often and in big mouthfuls if possible. Then from 2 sacks under its back, as you will hear, the civet excretes musk.
Wow.
What went down in Renaissance Florence?
I don't know.
I got to tell you, I have to excuse me. I have to like towel off here for a moment. I'm kind of getting all hot and sweaty from this text. Yeah. Anyway, that's if you want to hear that, it's called Canto dello Zibetto. I recommend listening with the text in front of you.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to buy the CD basically.
If you need those notes, yeah.
Although I think Hyperion might have put them up on their website. They definitely have the booklet notes. They may have the text too. I didn't check. Okay. Another one by Isaac, O Maligno e Duro Core, text by Lorenzo de' Medici. This is a lauda, and sung to the music of Canto dei Profumi, which we heard earlier. This is more serious. It laments Jesus' death. So I guess Cosimo had, not Cosimo, this is for Lorenzo, de' Medici had to, he had to balance out his spiritual life there with text praising the Lord as well. Track 12 is an anonymous composition, Ben Venga Maggio, text by Angelo Poliziano. This is a song for spring after Lent. It was performed by the young women while jousters, so guys on horses, I guess, with their big long lances, were entering into the arena. It's got a cheerful, lilting rhythm, and the song celebrates how men and women fall in love in May. These are this era's songs of this sort are really the most effective ones, I think. Track 13, Isaac Prophetarum Maxime. This song celebrates St. John the Baptist, patron saint of Florence. The text is Latin from the Gospels of John and Luke, and the vocals are scattered harmony with syllables popping out of the texture, making the words clear. This is a pretty long work at almost 7 minutes, and I'm impressed here by the countertenor's colors in various verses, which he keeps the interest up, as the rest of the ensemble is excellent as well. I certainly don't want to shortchange them. His timbre changes, the countertenors, as he goes into the higher range, and it darkens in the lower range, which kind of made this really a treat for the ear. Track 14, Isaac again, Trionfo delle Dee, from the popular song Ne più bella di queste. A trionfo, or triumph, it features costume characters on an elaborately decorated wagon pulled by oxen. So it's sort of like a modern parade float. Things haven't really changed that much. If you've ever been to Carnival, this tradition still exists, except they're on motored vehicles now. The song highlights the distinctive benefits promised to Florence by Juno, Minerva, and Venus. Okay, so we are in the more pagan ancient Roman vein here. This has a kind of processional square quality to it. It's like something you could walk to. Nothing tricky about the rhythms here. It speeds up and changes rhythm as it goes on, from 4 to dotted rhythm to dotted 3/4. The change from 4 to 3 was very popular in this era. That was like a really much used variation way of varying the music, and it's always effective. I always like hearing it, although we're not hearing it all the time. So these days, into the early Baroque, they used it. The text is in Italian for that one. Track 15 is Heinrich Isaac again. Cori Fortuna. As we know, Fortuna was a big character in the medieval era. She had a wheel, and you would be somewhere on the wheel, and she'd spin it, and your fortune would either go up or down. But it was a wheel, so if it was going up, it would eventually go down again. So,
the Wheel of Fortune.
The Wheel of Fortune. Yeah. There you go. Text here is by Serafino Aquilano. It says here this is a song to be performed in the intimacy of private chambers, though I really don't know why, if you listen to the text.
Yeah, after those other ones.
I know, some of the other ones.
You could do this anywhere.
Well, the one that we talked about the zibetto, the civet, those would have been sung by men in the street to women who were hiding kind of behind a screen. The singers were all masked. They would wear masks, and they'd be in the piazza, and they'd address them to young women safely hidden behind a sheer curtain in their windows on an upper floor. And so they'd all be probably giggling and stuff like that. I could just imagine. All right. The music fits the first half of the poem, then repeats for the last 4 lines. And it has been suggested that Isaac's music captures the motion of Fortune's wheel as it turns. The second half of the setting climbs steadily upward as the wheel ascends. At the conclusion, Fortune turns her wheel downward and plunges anyone clinging to it into the dust.
Ooh.
All of our fates, apparently.
Yes.
Track 16. Isaac again, he really gets the lion's share in this section of the recording. Lasso quel ch'altri fugge. This is missing its original bass part and was reconstructed for this recording. In the text, the lovesick speaker suffers but remains doggedly steadfast. Okay, this is real Italian stuff now. The tone of the music is somber and has a soft glow to it. Track 17, Isaac, quis dabit capiti meo aquam. This is a piece written in memory of Lorenzo de' Medici. He died unexpectedly in early April 1492, which, as you remember, was also the year Columbus set sail for America at the behest of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in Spain. A commemorative motet was required for Lorenzo, being the great man that he was. Angelo Poliziano provided the Latin text. And what's interesting about this is in the third section, the tenor voice drops out, a symbolic move representing the absence of Lorenzo. The ending emphasis on peace reflects Lorenzo's role as the peacemaker in Italy during his lifetime. War erupted again after he died. There's an ear-catching harmony right at the opening, and the absence of the tenor voice in the third verse is dramatic and very noticeable. Track 18, anonymous music, Ora mai sono in età, and the text is also by an anonymous author. The first 2 stanzas are by Feo Balcari, apparently. I couldn't really make out what the booklet was telling me here. The same music as Joramai Que Forasone, which we heard earlier, only this time the singer is eager to take religious vows and don the habit of the nun. So Savonarola was in Florence at about this time, and he encouraged the singing of it. It's a lauda, and the particular chant is very plain, sung monophonically. It sounds like a church chant, so the wheel has spun. Track 19 is anonymous, Che fai qui core, text is by Savonarola. The music is adapted from Poliziano's Ben Venga Maggio. This particular piece has fairly upbeat music, like a popular song. The Che fai qui core sung in the chorus is very catchy, and the singers urge the heart to go to its love, which is Jesus, who sweetly inflames the heart. Yeah, it's kind of a little surprise twist there. You thought it was going to be a sort of a naughty song, and it turns out that they're encouraging you to go to
extremes
Jesus.
on this.
He was a slick one, that Savonarola. Savonarola. I don't know. I got to get the pronunciation of that. Pronunciation is a big issue on this podcast, isn't it?
There's not too much room to get comfortable. We're always shifting languages and eras and everything else.
Yeah. Well, maybe at the end we'll actually be really,
getting edified anyway.
We are being edified.
Different linguistic challenges.
Track 20, anonymous composer, Viva Viva il nostro core. This is a religious version of the carnival song Viva Viva la ragione, reason. Okay, live on reason. Would be the secular text. The text here is political and calls for Christ to combat Pharaoh, and that's an apparent reference to Pope Alexander VI, the Borgia Pope, who was really evil. Okay, he was a horrible person. Boy, what a mess the church was in these days. You think that it has problems now? Boy, murder, bodies dumped into the Tiber, orgies.
Wow.
Just horrible stuff. Well, great stuff, but except the church shouldn't be doing it. Let's just say that. The music has a more popular tune profile, and the text renders Jesus as King of Florence. There's a fairly catchy repeating chorus as well. Finally, we arrive at the last work, track 21, Heinrich Isaac, Quis dabit pacem populo tumenti. A lament that addresses Lorenzo in heaven as if he were a secular saint. He's referred to as Holy Lorenzo.
Holy Lorenzo.
Holy Lorenzo. Holy Medici. Sorry, they call him Holy Medici. Holy Medici. I can see that becoming,
exclamation.
A swear word. This work cries out for peace too. After Lorenzo died, there were lots of war. The text of the first part draws from a Roman play about the death of Hercules. This is a polyphonic type setting with voices entering at different points on the same text, and it's a nice way to end the album. In sum, these voices in this ensemble, the Orlando Consort, really are made for each other. They sound really good together and unique as well. It's good ensemble singing. The smallness of the ensemble allows the texts to shine through. So I'd say this is an excellent recording of interesting music, and I have to also say that I have kind of a special kind of interest in this, having spent so much time in Florence and always wanting to know more about it. So it's got of historical interest as well. A good history lesson for the period.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. I like a cappella music. I find it sort of meditative, and it helps me focus. I like the sparseness of...
Did you find that on this one too? Because
it's
not like a straight church
thing. Because the thing I like about it, well, here, what's interesting too is there's 4 male voices. The countertenor is handling the high part, but they have a good blend. The recording itself is very clear, so you can hear, all the details. The quality of the recording just highlights what they're doing, which includes fabulous intonation.
Yes.
Singing a cappella, things can always go off pitch a little bit. I don't sense that here at all. And the enunciation is really great. You can hear, the little nuances in their voices, the pronunciation, and not just pronunciation, but the musicality of, what they're saying.
Yeah. So I just want to say good work to the Hyperion recording engineer, Ben Connellan, and the recording producer, Mark Brown.
What I particularly like about music from this period is the unexpected voice leading. Things happen that you're not always prepared for. And then the surprising harmonies that develop sometimes. Right. You get some, dissonances you were unprepared for. And it doesn't have the predictability that Baroque music that came later did. So, every once in a while, when you get sort of in a lull, some little harmonic surprise that's a lot more tension-causing than previous things comes out. And that's always a joy of this kind of music.
Yeah, but why is Baroque music predictable? Is it because that's the way we learned counterpoint in school? Or 'cause we learned it from Palestrina on, basically. And I guess it was a little more predictable, but
I think it's two things.
We didn't learn this kind of music in school. It's kind of, even recordings of it, the scholarship is all new as well.
I think one is our perspective, looking back at, the things that have become standard Bach and then later, classical music.
Right.
But I think also maybe before Baroque, things weren't as codified.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
So,
by the same token, though, we didn't even learn the non-codified music either. But if at the time, it might have sounded really, if you were immersed in that, is what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating.
It just, it does seem, even though it's earlier, sometimes to me it seems more adventurous.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the liberties taken, and that is what I find a particular interest in this era.
By the way, if you're sitting there saying to yourself, Mike's right. They do mispronounce a lot of names. Let me just say, it's just the two of us here, okay? So if there's money coming in, maybe we can get some researchers to help us out, or producers to help us out with some of that. So I think we're doing pretty well, actually, with the names.
Yeah, not too bad.
In general. I'm just stumbling over them.
Well, if I have to put the time into musical research or phonetic
we're gonna go
research,
for music,
we'll go for the music.
Go for the music. Although I do have a website that pronounces words and names, but the internet is so worthless.
It's not always reliable,
because it's just anybody could put up the pronunciation, and a lot of them get it wrong.
Yeah,
like I've heard just certain English words pronounced wrong, and I'm like, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, they might have some guy from Queens there reciting them,
Did you ever hear that there was a David Letterman thing where someone wrote in? It was on viewer mail. This is back in the it must have been the early 90s. That song, it had to be the 80s. Yeah, somebody had written in saying that he thinks that the song "Billie Jean" by Michael Jackson. He says he could swear that that Michael Jackson is singing "The Chair Is Not My Son."
Oh. Well, I think there's a whole website dedicated to that. Lyrics.
There should be, because it's hilarious.
Lyrics heard wrongly.
But then David Letterman plays the recording, and what he's done. You hear Billie Jean. She says, "I am the one, but the," and then right at that point, there's a splice, and you hear this big New York voice say, "Chair." It's hilarious. So seek it out. I can't. Oh man.
It wasn't it. There's a lot of songs like that though. There was that Elton John song. What is it? "Pull Me Closer," Tony Danza.
Tony Danza.
And there was that George Benson song.
Yeah.
They say that Leon rides his bike on Broadway.
Leon rides his bike on Broadway. Oh boy, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think there's a website called Lyrics Heard Wrongly.
Yeah.
So
some of them, I don't know. I didn't hear them like that, but I've certainly done my share of hearing words wrongly.
My father was great at this.
Yeah.
He would purposely change the lyrics to songs. So if you remember some pop songs, let's see, Betty Davis Eyes. There was a singer, Kim Carnes, I think. So he changed that to Charles Atlas Thighs. And and then he had
Charles Atlas Thighs.
There was Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah.
That became Lebanese and Red Chinese. So.
Oh my God. I love things like that, even using the wrong word. This is recently in the news where one of our gaffe-prone political people, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she wanted to say the Gestapo police, and she referred to them as the Gazpacho police, and the press really just piled on her like they always do. But is anybody not seeing the comedy gold in that error? I just love things like that, There was a great one in the movie Flamingo.
Bigly.
Yeah, Bigly. Yeah. There was a good one in the movie The Flamingo Kid with Nat Dillon. This is how it all started for me, where there's a big card game that happens at the end, and one guy starts freaking out, and he says, "Oh, this guy knows all the cards before he sees what they are. He must be psychotic." And he means psychic, of course, but just things. I love things like that, and so I don't know, when I hear them, I kind of. So maybe we're mispronouncing these names on purpose. You ever think of that? Ah,
yeah, there you go.
There you go.
That's it.
All right,
that's the ticket.
Speaking of names that we don't pronounce, actually, I think I've got this one though. We have a listener who. She was someone I work with, really, but she listens to the podcast. And she said that she was amazed at all these composers we have, like she doesn't know who any of them are. I see that as a strength of the podcast. I mean, we do Beethoven, Mozart, and all this too, but I try to just cast a wide net, and especially try to get a lot of contemporary composers in. Right now, we're going to do an unknown composer, and in fact, an unrecorded composer until now, but this one's from the past. Anton Edvard Pratte.
And
yeah,
this is really cool.
What's really cool?
His music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to get into that.
This
is quite a discovery. Discovery of the week.
Is it an instrument that you don't hear all that often, although we've done a couple things.
Well, I have an ear for the harp, so I kind of like to get harp recordings on. There's going to be another one coming up in a few weeks, probably.
Right. Yeah, not only that, but this music is, for its period, actually quite inventive and impressive. So.
Yeah, it is. It's okay. Anton Edvard Pratte. He's considered to be a Swedish harpist and composer, one of the great harpists of his era. He was born in 1796, died in 1875, so that would make him a Romantic era composer. So we're going to hear 3 works by him, 2 solo harp works and a grand concert for harp and orchestra. Yeah, we don't hear the harp as a solo instrument often enough. It's kind of like the guitar in where it has its own repertoire.
Right.
And a lot of its own composers, although a lot of the great mainstream kind of composers wrote for the harp as well. Mozart did. So we're going to hear some of his work. I said Swedish. He wasn't born in Sweden. He was born in Haida, Bohemia, which these days is Novi Bor in the Czech Republic. So he would be kind of Czech or Bohemian. He wound up in Sweden as a result of the family puppet theater, which they took to Denmark and Sweden when the Napoleonic Wars made life in Central Europe difficult. I like that word. Difficult. Oh, war made my life difficult. Didn't make your life a living hell, just difficult.
Yeah, seems like an understatement.
It really is an understatement. I don't know. The more you study history, the more you realize we're living in unprecedentedly peaceful times. Maybe ancient Rome had something like this, but that's about it, I'd say. Although I guess the Roman army was always fighting out on the frontier somewhere, but if you're in the middle of Rome somewhere, you weren't threatened for like hundreds and hundreds of years. All right, the artist on this album, the soloist, is Delphine Constantin-Reznik. On the harp, she's French. And French players they get all those great colors out of the instrument. It's just fantastic. She's really great. And the Norrkoping Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Daniela Musca. This is on the Bis label, and it's an SACD, which means it's a lovely DSD recording. And if you have the capability, it's 5-channel stereo. Lots of space. Spacious.
This is a really good recording.
And it's an excellent recording, too, of the harp especially. Beautiful balance also between the harp and the orchestra.
The harp, the balance is good, but the harp is extremely close mic'd.
Yeah.
Which allows her to use extreme contrast and dynamics. So, you can hear all the little details even when she's playing very softly.
Yeah, and there is quite a range, so she plays loud. The harp doesn't really get very loud.
No, but it's big on this recording.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah. And once you hit those bass notes, if you play them loud, they have a way of pinning the needles because they have like a big resonance, even though they're not loud. They get a lot of...
they get an after swell to them where they, get big. But it all sounds really good on this recording. Yeah,
beautiful. We're going to have to credit the engineer on this. I should write them down, but I have the booklet here. I'll check it out in a moment. Okay, so anyway, Pratte became popular in Sweden. Now, Sweden wasn't really one of the musical centers at the time.
No.
So that's why, composers would just get lost up there, I guess, and sort of... they have their great careers, but they wouldn't be part of the whole mainstream. You had to be sort of like with today. If you're a jazz musician, you want to get famous, you want to be in New York or one of very few other places. And these days, you wanted to be in Vienna. Yeah, especially at this time. Later in Paris as well, but Vienna was always a big center. Right. So, because that's where Mozart was, and Beethoven was there as well, and Brahms. I mean, for the whole 19th century, Vienna was a musical capital. And I've never been there. Can you believe it? Of all places for me not to have been.
Yeah, I've never been there either.
Yeah, I'll have to go. I mean, geez, we're getting older. We got to get down there.
Get there. Well, as soon as we can travel again. Yeah. Vienna was on my list. I went to Prague. Budapest was next.
Yeah.
But that got cut short from Corona. So I'd like to do Budapest and then Vienna. But
I've been to Germany, though, like Hamburg. But I never went to Austria. Anyway. Well, I'm gonna have to get there. Absolutely, all my musical heroes live there. Not to mention certain intellectual ones as well.
Right.
I mean, it's a big cultural city, and it's also where the movie The Third Man takes place. But that's beside the point. Okay, so he was offered the post as harpist in the orchestra of the Royal Opera, but he turned it down because he was aiming for something similar abroad, which never came to pass. And so he was stuck in Sweden for his whole life, kind of like me, really, stuck in Japan. I don't see myself going anywhere else now. I would have liked to, I guess, but I don't know. I'm working here and things are okay. I guess I'm not going anywhere else. Getting older, we'll have to see. Okay, anyway, the major work on this album is the Grand Consort in G minor for harp and orchestra. It's very long, and it's 42 minutes.
Yeah, the first movement.
And the first movement
forever,
itself goes on for over 20 minutes, sort of like one of the Brahms piano concerti. And it's also a bit hard to follow, although it's long. If I had heard it 3 or 4 times, I'd probably get the whole form down. It's labeled Allegro con spirito, pretty standard. For your first movement is a sonata form, and it's generally an allegro. Now this is a gigantic sonata form. It's not a sonata form in the way that, say, like a Mahler symphony would be, where it's just all this space and everything just moves very slowly because all of the cadences are being prolonged by all these like substitute chords and like Wagner used to do, like building tension, and then you get some false cadence and the tension doesn't get resolved. That's not happening here. He's just coming up with new musical ideas to keep it going. So it's a pretty exciting movement. It's got a very dramatic orchestral opening in the strings, followed by an answer in the winds. The string section plays more melodic material, and we get a lyrical, highly melodic second theme in the exposition of the sonata form. There's a big dramatic cadence, ends the opening section, and we get a little interesting wind introduction to the solo harp. Now, they've done a lot of setup for this, so the solo harp really has to come in well. He's gotten like about 3 minutes of material before him, setting up the themes. It's a nice entrance on a block chord, very full and loud. And the first part of the melody is played without any accompaniment. He gets the solo, or she in this case is the harpist, gets a solo all by herself. The orchestral parts creep in little by little. I really liked that effect. Konstantin Reznik's tone is full and rich, and she's recorded up close, as Russ said. This is a fantastic recording of the harp. Must hear if you're a harp enthusiast. The quieter elements of her playing are well picked up too. The second theme, played solo by the harp, is really gorgeous in this piece, and the backing figuration sensitively taken over the very clear melodic material. Now, the development section features long solo sections for the harp, who, after all, is who we want to hear, and all of the musical material is attractive enough to keep us listening. I'm not sure how this music was developing. I'm not really entirely sure it was. It seemed like there were these new melodic sections. I couldn't really make it out, okay? But there's a cadenza that's even more rhetorical than anything else before the opening returns. You can kind of tell, because when I say rhetorical, you're usually getting, when someone's talking, when they're kind of pondering something, you'll hear like one note with a lot of pause, and then maybe 1-2 notes, and then more. It kind of sounds like someone speaking aloud as they're thinking. It's got that quality to it. So you hear that in the harp. At the very end, when we hear the second theme, it sounds kind of funeral-like. He changes the whole profile of it. And there's a funeral march rhythm before the solo harp plays it. Interesting development there. I didn't hear this enough times to work out all the details of what's happening in this very long movement. And it's one of the other things about this podcast. We listen to these recordings. We decide we're going to do the recording. We listen to it once, twice, as many times as we can in a week. And then we just start talking about it without really getting to know it all that well. It takes months really to get to know it, or sometimes years.
Yeah, this one is so long, and orchestral build up to the harp expositions are so long in themselves.
Yeah.
It's really hard to remember and go back.
Right.
In some cases, what I liked about it, the cadenza, and there's ample space for the harp. And then in other sections where the harp is featured, but there's also orchestral backings, I really like the intricate textures and the matching of instruments. Like, there's one section near the end of this first movement where the sort of counterline is on oboe.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just a real magical, light accompaniment that fits nicely, in with the harp. So this sort of timbre consciousness is also really well thought out.
Right.
What's going to match with the harp when they're both together here. And
there are a lot of moments
really nice.
like that in this movement. Like I mentioned, the wind introducing the harp at the beginning was another one, and there are others as well. Okay, so it's a dramatic movement, and it's gorgeous too. It also goes on for a very long time, and there are a lot of false cadences right at the end. Did you notice this? It's like there was like a chain of them. Like, oh my God, when's this going to end? It's already been 20 minutes long.
That's what
but it was fun. It was good.
It's sort of, the style is conventional and sort of like a early romantic style, almost classical in a way. However, it does have a lot of unexpected cadences and little harmonic tricks that are somewhat, I wouldn't say they're, humorous in the way as CPE Bach, but they're a little bit.
And they're not like, they're pre-Wagnerian too, so they're not that kind of like building tension sort of thing.
No.
They're more like teasing.
Yeah, they're just little nudges that make sure, oh, you didn't think that was going to happen. Kind of
so
thing.
a little Mozart maybe.
Yeah, a little
that kind of thing.
like
or
Mozart,
CPE
but
Bach
very
too.
clever. And it keeps, other than the wonderful feature of the harp and the nice orchestral writing, it's another extra little touch that's added to just keep unexpected progressions going through it. So I found it really, the first time I listened to it, I was hooked right away. I thought,
me too.
This is great.
Like, whoa. Yeah, very attractive. That's only the first movement. There's still two more to come. The second movement, Romanza, is played andante arioso. And it reminds me of the slow movement of a Mozart piano concerto. If you remember Piano Concerto 21, the one that was in the Elvira Madigan movie, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, that one, it kind of has that sort of feel to it. Not that melody, but the harp's entrance is muted, a lovely sound, quiet and introspective in this movement. And the harp gets a gentle solo cadenza towards the end. The movement explodes without pause into the rondo, and this is labeled Polacca alla Svedese. So in the Swedish, it's a Polacca, which I guess would be a dance in the Swedish style, meaning in the way he wants it to be, because he himself is Swedish now. It has the feeling of a dance, which is often the case with concerti. You want to end with on a happy dance-like feeling. It's in 3/4, I guess. Could be 6/8, but I got 3. The orchestra gives the opening material a more aggressive feeling when we hear it than when we hear it on the harp. This more aggressive material evaporates into something lyrical in the same rhythm in the middle section, and the opening material repeats. In fact, it's a rondo, so it comes back a few times, but again, on 2 listenings, I wasn't able to follow them all. There's a nice floaty coda at the end. The harp material in the whole movement is very appealing, and really throughout this work, this is a real discovery. It's a really fantastic work. Give it a listen. We're gonna load this up. You're gonna have a link to this, so you can just kind of click on it and hear it. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, this is great. Actually, this is so good that I felt the other pieces being nice, but there's sort of a letdown after this.
Well, they're not dramatic.
So, yeah.
They're just sort of more pretty than dramatic.
So I may have put this at the end of the program if I was designing it myself. But
I see. Yeah, but no, you want to. It's funny because you want people to maintain interest. You don't want to make them wait. You know what I mean? Like they might not wait. They might say, I don't know. Anyway, the next two works on the album are for solo harp. And part of the reason that the program loses interest in drama is because the harp
you don't have the orchestra.
Really isn't a dramatic instrument. It tends to be pretty. This is kind of an issue with the harp, in fact. Some people have tried to change its profile. We tend to think of it as being, the instrument angels play because it's so sweet sounding. And it's hard to get away from that. Some composers have tried to, but...
Well, I felt on these, the one thing that you lose the dynamic contrasts and force of the orchestra, but this harp writing, you can tell it's by, a master of the harp, because the sort of approach and melodic direction and everything is not the standard harp that I'm used to.
Right.
So I heard a lot of things working through even these other works that sounds sort of guitar-like to me.
Yeah.
And not, not the angelic type of thing, but other types of figurations that normally I would associate with a guitar or something. And so, sometimes I was not thinking I'm listening to harp, but it could be something else, even or piano or
just
something.
In the figuration, that sort of thing. Yeah. So the second work that we hear is Theme and Variations on a Swedish folk tune. And the Swedish folk tune is called Cotton Ochiligen, for another mispronunciation, which means the cat and the kitten. It's a nursery rhyme, which was often sung to a variant of the famous La Folia tune that we hear in a lot of Baroque works, variations on that. Okay, it starts with the introduction, played maestoso. The theme is in a saraband melody, so it's kind of slow and sort of melting, I guess you could call. Like it's got kind of like a liquid sort of quality to the rhythm. The harp is even more up front in this solo recording. Gorgeous tone. The instrument's well recorded. There's a flourish at the beginning. Slow saraband rhythm is the theme. We go to variation 1. Okay, now this is interesting. They take one variation out of the sequence. I'll talk about it when I get there. The first variation quieter than the theme, with figuration providing relief for the melody to stand out in. The theme is played with triplet accompaniment the second time. Second variation has a quicker figuration supporting the melody, sounding like 6/8 time. Variation 3 is in 4/4. There's a melody in the treble that's commented on in the bass. Then we skip ahead to variation 5. This is really strange. Variation 4 was removed and placed at the end. And I'm not entirely sure this was a good idea. I think it's the artist's decision, but we'll get to that. So we hear variation 5 next. It's a labeled quasi hymn, so like a church hymn. And before it, there's a pause. There would have been a pause at the end of variation 4 too, because variation 4 ends the work. There's a full stop here. This one starts mysteriously with a bass note followed by quietly sounded harmonics. I love harmonics on the harp too. I really like them in any instrument, really, but they're really nice on the harp. I like them on any instrument. I don't know. The melody is played on the harmonics. Nice effect here. So it's got I guess you could call it angelic.
Yeah.
Variation 6, Allegro Confuco, not a marking you associate with the harp, really, because it kind of sounds aggressive. Confuco, with fire, with passion.
Yeah.
All right. It's fast, it's virtuosic, relatively loud, I guess, as far as the harp goes, and has running scales in treble and bass accompanying the melody. Variation 7, which is technically the last one in the composition, is Adagio. It's quieter. It's got an Alberti bass, da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, that kind of repeating sort of pattern or figure, accompanying the melody, which rises and falls to its key notes. Now, I think this is supposed to be the end of the piece. It ends slowly. Maybe our soloist, Delphine Constantin-Reznik, didn't think that was exciting enough. So she stuck variation number 4 at the end. And it's fast, relatively virtuosic, sort of like a Chopin arpeggio etude. If you think about the first etude in C minor in Chopin's Opus 10, it's got that kind of quality to it. Right. It doesn't really, or more like the arpeggio sonata, Opus 20, the other C major in the second set of etudes by Chopin. It doesn't really provide a full satisfying cadential ending because it's not the end of the work, technically.
Right.
But at least it ends on a more energetic note. I think that's what she was going for. I would have left this alone and had Variation 7 end it. But still great playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem there. Okay, and we end the recording with the last piece, Souvenir de Norvège. Souvenir of Norway. Fra fjelle og dal. I don't know how to say this. Sounds from the mountains and valleys of Norway was another name that this piece went under. It's labeled as a fantasy romantique. And this work uses 4 Norwegian folk songs, which I've written the names to, but I'm not going to say them. They are in English. A little boy from Tilstendalen, To Drive Water and Drive Firewood, Last Year I Was a Goat, and Dreary Sunday Night.
Oh.
Okay. Those are the 4 English translated folk songs in this work. All right. I'm sure our Norwegian listeners would love to laugh at my Norwegian pronunciation, but not today. All right. All right. Starts with a very quiet figuration over which the first theme plays. The second theme starts at around 2 minutes and 55 seconds in and features a melody with a dotted rhythm. This one starts a lot more folk-like style than the first one, and the theme is then subjected to an echo and a background accompaniment of fast triplets. And then there's another variation after this, and we get to theme 3 at about the 6 minute and 23 second mark. By the way, when I pick these times, I just kind of look at the clock when they start, so I'm not getting them exactly. I'm not rewinding and seeing exactly when they start, so I'm assuming the listener can figure that out. The third theme is played chordally with a harmony included with each note. So they're it's like a chord melody. Also a dotted rhythm, but the rhythm is jumpier than in the previous tune. This then gets a florid accompaniment in its first variation. And the last theme is heard at about 9 minutes 45 seconds. If you want to follow the 4 folk songs, I've given you the times for them. This one is played chordally and sounds completely different than the other 3, really, but than the previous one. There's a variation on the higher end of the harp with the lower end accompanying. The theme is, when that happens, by the way, in the bass, you get a lot of what's the overtones, and so that you get a sense of the richness of the overtones of the harp from this particular variation, because you're not hearing the middle of the harp being played in this, but you are hearing those overtones. And the theme is played last in the mid-range, moving down toward the bass with accompanying figuration in the high end. I may have missed some variations in there, but there's a big flourish, and we're at the end. A lovely, enjoyable piece. And this is just a gorgeous album, a real discovery. This is one of those records that you want to, it's just something new that you haven't heard before, and it's really good, and it'll just make you happy, and it's good to relax to as well if you choose to do that. I hadn't heard, this is a great album of music I hadn't heard by a composer I hadn't heard of, and a harpist to keep an ear out for if she's always going to sound like this. This is a really great sounding recording all around too. I hope we'll hear more from her on recordings as richly engineered as this. If Russ is going to say anything, I'm going to look up the name of the engineer right here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this more than I expected. I think this final piece is the one that seemed to have things that reminded me of more guitar-like writing rather than the things we associate with harp. But for me, the standout piece is the first one, the Grand Consort in G minor. I found that something, and I wrote down, definitely come back and listen to this one again. So,
yeah, I'm going to have to hear this as well, like again and again. And it's also an SACD, richly recorded and engineered by producer Matthew Bennett and sound engineer Dave Rowell. Good work, man. Good
team, yeah.
Good team.
Nice sonics.
Amazing. Gorgeous sound. Very impressed. Please do my recording. All right, last, we have some new music. Always like to get some contemporary composers on this recording if we can. Now, this work is another BIS label, also an SACD, the same as the Pratte. And it's by United Strings of Europe with Julian Azkoul, the director. We also get Ruby Hughes as a soprano on 3 tracks, and this is called Renewal.
It's a cool name, isn't it?
It is a cool. It's got a beautiful album cover too of this tree coming out of the middle of this lake, and it's just this blue, soothing album cover. I really like it a lot.
And the conductor's name's cool. He's like, Azkoul. Yeah.
Azkoul.
Azkoul, man.
Azkoul.
Azkoul.
the conductor. It's he was made for music. This guy. Okay. Anyway, this recording. It's a string orchestra recording. Now, what that means is you're going to get a lot of transcriptions, which is exactly what we get here. A lot of times, string quartet works will be transcribed for string orchestra. And whenever that happens, I always want to hear the original work because I want to hear what the composer's intentions were. I'll get more into that in a minute. So this album is a collection of arrangements of works that deal with themes of loss and transformation. And the idea arose from the lockdowns of COVID-19. Although we are in Japan, we're never locked down. We changed due to COVID too, because we are now doing a podcast, whereas we probably wouldn't have been had life gone on as usual. So I thought it might be appropriate first podcast anniversary pick, because we started this because of the COVID as well.
I really like this. I'm always willing to hear new contemporary works, and I'm often disappointed in the musicality of some of them. I think
for me, half and half.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. But this one hits the mark with musicality and sort of lots of endearing melodic things to draw you in to the music. There's enough there, even on the first listening, to find appealing. Part of it's due to the gorgeous tone of this string ensemble.
This is another richly recorded. We really scored big in classical on this week on sound engineering, because all 3 of these recordings just sound fantastic. This one too. It's got this rich upholstered sort of sound quality to it.
Especially when you're limited to one family. I mean, orchestral music is one of my favorite types of ensemble because of the rich colors of the orchestra.
Right.
And now here, you're going to wipe away all of your brass and woodwinds. So you've got a limited palette. What this reminded me of is a recording we heard a few episodes ago, the Vaughan Williams string orchestra piece, in that if the composing is done exactly to some, kind of way of drawing out the full kind of colors of the strings, that can be enough to satisfy you as well. And I felt that was on this.
Okay. Luckily, we're on this podcast and I can make a correction now. I was wanted to look up who the engineer was on this one. And guess who it is? It's producer Matthew Bennett, sound engineer Dave Rowell.
All right.
Because I looked at the wrong booklet before.
Oh, okay.
So on the Pratte album, which we loved so much, want to give credit where credit's due. The producer is Marian Schwebel, Take 5 Music Production. And the sound engineers are Ingo Petri, also Take 5 Music Production, and Marian Schwebel for the solo works. So she did the engineering for the solo works, and he was the sound engineer on the orchestra recording. Oh. Ingo Petri. Or she. I'm not sure Ingo, what kind of name what that would be. But this is looks like a lot of women involved in that one. Very nice. Good to see women behind the mixing board there.
Beast for peace.
It's a rare sight. Yeah. Beast for peace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good sound.
Oh, I just scraped my headphone against the
the pop
screen.
These are metal pop screens too, so watch out. You can lacerate your skin.
All right.
There.
Anyway, let's go through this. Speaking of now we have the women engineers were on the other recording. This particular one has 2 male engineers, but a lot of women composers on this one. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have the first track work by Joanna Marsh, British composer. This is arranged by Julian Azkoul from a choral work, and this is called In Winter's House, composed in 2019. Marsh is a British composer who lives in Dubai, Pretty interesting. I bet there's a lot of...
Because she missed winter, that's why she wrote this piece.
Yeah, maybe. Or, the thing is, there are composers... I think of... there was an Italian composer, Carlo Domeniconi, who lived in Turkey. And he turned out all these works that had these fantastic, like, Turkish modes in them. And I suspect that if she's living in Dubai, I bet a lot of her works are going to have a lot of those sort of Arab modes in them as well. Not in this one, though, I don't think. It's originally a choral work. Azkoul's arrangement, he's the conductor, expands the pitch range over the chordal voices for the strings, enhancing the sense of spaciousness of the original. And we really do get that. This really does sound like it has a very wide dynamic range, or just frequency range as well. Originally, I guess we should say this, it's a setting of a poem by Oxford-based poet Jane Draycott, but we're not hearing the text here.
Inspiration only.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's been set as a choral work, so it wasn't just the inspiration. Yeah, she actually did set the words.
Unless you look at the words, you're not going to know what they are. Right.
The music has the resonance of an old folk song, and the poem conjures a fairy tale landscape using the imagery of darkness and light, renewal and rebirth. I'm getting this from the booklet, obviously. Okay. The melody may be folky, but harmonies add a bit of spice at points. This is me talking now. String orchestras tend to have a nice bloom to them, and we get that richness on this SACD DSD recording. Spaciousness is the operative word here. I bet this would be even better if we could hear the sung words, but as an instrumental, it works well. There's a churchy quality to it at points, and it ends very suddenly.
Yeah, that's what I highlighted too. The lines actually move rather slowly in this piece, so you can follow them. And as the different instrumental sort of movement of the lines intersect, that results in some interesting harmonies. I wouldn't call them terribly dissonant, but it's sort of a flow of tension and release that's satisfying. And the slow movement makes it, in time that you can think about each one as it comes across. So I found myself kind of pulled into listening to those sort of tensions and releases that would happen in that. And I thought it was overall, very pretty. So nice piece.
Next work is by the American composer Caroline Shaw, and this is it's called Entr'acte, and it's actually the first piece I've ever heard by her, because it was recorded on an album by the Attacca Quartet called Orange, which I highly recommend that listeners seek out. It came out a few years ago, and it's all works that she wrote for string quartet, and they're all really good, including this one. This version for string orchestra was arranged by Shaw herself in 2014. The original work was written in 2011. Originally written for string quartet. Oh boy. It's structured like a classical minuet trio, but it takes the form a little further, and it uses a variety of string ensemble effects, which is really what I like so much about modern or contemporary string music, because they really just can't just have you bowing the strings. They got to do all these other things too, and they come up with these really enchanting sounds. Shaw is no different. This actually sounds like a richer, thicker version of the original, yet it retains the intimacy of a chamber work. It's a really good arrangement. Perhaps that's due to the lightness of the scoring. Different sections of the ensemble tend to take different sections of the work. It's very appealing and sincere. The latter is a quality that always comes across in this composer's music. Her music always sounds very sincere to me. It goes like straight to the heart. It's really nice, or straight to the ear, as it were. The business of the pizzicato sections are very enjoyable. The busyness. I wrote my text auto-corrected to business.
None of your business.
Busyness. Yeah. It's very busy. Busyness of the pizzicato sections are very enjoyable in such a large ensemble, because you hear all the strings plucking. It's kind of a cool, kind of rich sort of sound. The recording is very spacious and detailed. You can hear very quiet rubbing on the strings at certain parts. I like this version as well as the original. By the way, we did some of Caroline Shaw's music last year, released on the None Such label, and I was rather disappointed by them. I didn't really like the works or the performances very much. But what turned me on to her music was the Attacca Quartet's album Orange, which I highly recommend you hear. And this is just reinforcing that I really do like this composer, and I'm interested in what she's doing. Just those last year we heard those 2 recordings that didn't go over well with me, let's say. But this is fantastic. Give this a listen. Yeah,
I like this one. That she gives you sort of this central motif, that triplet, da, 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 to hold on to.
Right.
It gets you used to that. Then it goes away, comes back again. After that sort of bowed section, the pizzicato section is really long. And as you say, the modern techniques used in that are interesting. It gets really rhythmically complex, and there's another kind of plucking effect simulating like a reverb. It's an actual technique that sounds like the sound is echoing back, but it's not. It's actually, part of that plucking technique. It was a very modern kind of thing that sounds really cool. And then in the next section, there's contrasting bowing techniques. There's like a long bowing with contrasted choppier bowing over it, and so you get these layers of different things happening. And then there's that eerie kind of falling pitch bowing. It's a little sort of disconcerting. You think, oh, what's going to happen? And then the triplet theme comes back and you feel, at ease again. So it's sort of like a little roller coaster of different moods and techniques. And, I thought the arc of the composition is satisfying overall.
Yeah, I want to mention Caroline Shaw is a composer that I'm very interested in, and I will be keeping an ear out for future recordings of her music. I should have looked up the pronunciation of this guy's name. Osvaldo Golijov. I'm going to say Golijov. I don't know. It's probably Spanish. 3 songs for soprano and string orchestra. The first track is called Night of the Flying Horses. Now, these are 3 songs that were written for different occasions, and then later on he wrote these new orchestrations for them and put them together. So they were actually written at completely different times. Ruby Hughes is the soprano on these 3 works. Golijov is Argentinian, or Golijov. I don't know. In Spanish, J is like an...
Golijov?
Yeah, it could be anything, really. Well, it's one way, but I just don't know what it is. He's Argentinian from a family that emigrated from Romania in the 1920s and now lives in the U.S., so he's been all over the place.
Gets around.
Yeah. Let's see. The United Strings of Europe, along with Ruby Hughes, the soprano, adapted these songs further after the composer arranged them with the composer's permission. The first work begins with a Yiddish lullaby called Close Your Eyes that Golijov wrote for Sally Potter's film The Man Who Cried, which I haven't seen. The story explores the fate of Jews and gypsies in the lead up to World War II through the doomed love of a young Jewish woman for a gypsy man. That doesn't sound like it's going to end well.
No.
The lullaby transforms to a duina, a slow, mournful gypsy genre, followed by a mad gallop that Golijov says he stole from his friends, the gypsy band Taraf de Haiduks. Here it sounds like a chase between the 2 violin sections who play in canon before merging toward the end. The opening of this is very soothing and calm, the lullaby. It's sung a cappella by Ruby Hughes, who has a very nice sounding voice, very attractive. It sounds like a small array of strings accompanies the second verse, and it gradually grows as the song goes on. The original poem in English is by Sally Potter. It was translated to Yiddish by Barry Davis, apparently for use in the movie. And the lullaby ends with an ominous descending bass figure, which begins a sort of call and answer between the cello and violin. Mm-hmm. And this is a long, atmospheric, wordless section with Middle Eastern modal themes. It ends with the rather harsh gallop. It's kind of an odd piece because the singing ends a third of the way through, and then you still have 2/3 of the piece to go, and it's all instrumental. And it sounds like it's almost like 2 more movements. The vocal and words don't even hint that the end is going to wind up here. And it's a pretty disturbing in its manicness, this ending.
Yeah, I got the visual of sort of horses galloping to take off, like a huge number of Pegasus running to come off. That the charging strings create that image. So
right, it was really weird though. Especially after the lullaby, like all this other stuff happens. Boy. All right, the second of the 3 songs is called Lua Descolorida. This is a song I heard Dawn Upshaw sing on an album long ago. It's really beautiful. It's a poem by Rosalia De Castro, and it's written in Gallego, or Galician, I guess you could say, the language of the Galician region of Spain. The song is an homage to Couperin's melismas in his lessons of Tenebrae. So melisma, again, the vowel, ornamenting a vowel by singing different tones on a single vowel. And there is a lot of that in this work. It doesn't sound Baroque, though. It's very beautiful. The poem is very sad. It's about a woman who just wants to be totally forgotten and blotted out of memory. And there's a lot of this kind of aching sadness to it. The slow tempo and gently changing chords make the work very moving as the singer sings to the moon that she wishes for an oblivion where she won't be remembered. The large string sections add details that aren't heard in the original, which is for piano, I think. It's voice and piano, I seem to recall. And it enhances the work considerably. It's a beautiful melody all the way through. The voice is very clear and exposed in the recording, and the singer sustains the vocal part well. This recording also has extremes of loud and quiet. Okay, and then we have the third song, How Slow the Wind, originally for soprano and string quartet, and it's a setting of 2 Emily Dickinson poems. It starts with repeated notes, bowed in the orchestra. Then there's a contrasting melodic section. The text is also in English. The voice seems to have more reverb or space surrounding it. The 2 sections set the scene for the 2 contrasting poems, and they alternate with each other as the 2 musical sections alternate. Hughes has a beautiful voice and sounds fantastic in this context. The piece ends inconclusively, just drifting into silence. And that's those 3 works.
Yeah, interesting. I like the sparse arrangement on this one particularly. And then she gets into really high register, which helps that vocal stand out. But there's some nice bowed bass work there. And so you have this huge contrast of register between the bass and the high soprano voice. And some interesting vocal techniques at the very end of the tune that are different from the main exposition of the melody. So something new coming at the end. Very interesting.
Yeah. Next, we get probably the centerpiece of the recording, the only work by a dead composer, Felix Mendelsohn, who I'm sure everybody has heard of. This is an arrangement of his last string quartet, the string quartet number 6 in F minor, opus 80, composed in 1847. Interestingly enough, this particular string quartet has been in my head for quite a while now because the Tokach Quartet recently recorded it for Hyperion Records, and we're going to be talking about that recording in a week or two. So we're going to hear this work again in its original form. That particular recording has a certain interest of its own that I'll talk about when we actually do feature it. This is here on this album because it was written in response to the unexpected and tragic death of Felix Mendelssohn's beloved sister, the composer Fanny Mendelssohn. Now, she died of a stroke at the age of 42. Well, she had a stroke at 42, and she died of the complications resulting from it. Now, if that's not weird enough that someone would die of a stroke at 42, Mendelssohn himself died a few months later of the same type of stroke at the age of 38.
Wow.
And both of their parents and a grandfather also died the same way. So there must be some kind of genetic thing going on here.
Yep. And the work is full of angst and agitation.
It certainly is. Actually, I said it was very Beethovenian. It sounds like he's really borrowing like a lot of this feeling from Beethoven in order to get his some power across.
And you get the expanded dynamic range because when you go from quartet to string orchestra, now you're going to hit the double bass instead of the cello.
Right.
So you can bring out your subwoofer.
Yeah, exactly.
To bring that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mendelssohn's music generally isn't powerful. Really isn't a word you'd use for it.
But this piece.
But this piece is,
yeah.
And I think he's kind of borrowing some of that angst from Beethoven because I hear a lot of Beethoven elements in this. Anyway, this work is in F minor, the same key as Beethoven's Serioso Quartet, Opus 95. And that's probably intentional. It stands out in Mendelssohn's output like the Serioso does in Beethoven's. The Serioso, the Beethoven String Quartet is very austere, really. It's kind of very, very serious. It doesn't really develop much. It kind of goes from section to section, and there's just no humor in it at all. And I suspect Mendelssohn's thinking of that in this work. Both works have a dark, foreboding quality, but Mendelssohn's work clings to the minor with no relief until the end. The first movement is tumultuous and unsettled in a Beethovenian way. The second theme is more lyrical and pleading. But most of this movement progresses in an urgent, stormy way. I don't think the ensemble takes one of the repeats, because this is 3 minutes shorter than the string quartet versions. That's fair game, though. The second movement is labeled Allegro Acai. It's a scherzo, but it's kind of like what's called a Totentanz, a dance of death, with a processional and funereal trio in the middle. The opening is rhythmic and aggressive with familiar Mendelssohn melodic touches at the end of phrases as they taper off. And the middle section has a ghostly floating quality to it in its 6/8 time. The sections all melt into each other appealingly. It has a brief coda that ends quietly, as if wiped out and going to bed after the Totentanz. Totentanz. I'm not even saying these right. I'm not even trying to say these right. Totentanz. You know? So
what's the matter with you?
Just put some beer in me and look what happens. I'm just having I can't even be bothered.
Totentits.
I don't know. It's Totentits. He did a Totentits. Anyway. Track 3, movement 3, Adagio, a tender and melancholic movement characterized by sighing, almost vocal melody. There's a sense of nostalgia and longing with dotted rhythms akin to a heartbeat. Dotted rhythm is dun, 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 dun. Okay.
Yeah. Here you get a little relief from the hammering angst. It gets into major a bit here, and it gives you the A flat major, and you get a little. It actually ends on that major chord, so you get a little breather from all of the,
But that won't last long.
No.
Because the fourth movement, labeled Allegro Molto, the torment resumes, as it says in the booklet.
And they bring out their hammers for this one.
Yeah.
Boy.
The ending of this quartet is one of the most virtuosic in the repertoire, and I'm sure the same is true for the string orchestra version. It's a final attempt, this movement, to overcome grief, but catharsis and redemption are never achieved. Ooh. Stormy rushing figures return, again finishing with Mendelssohnian melodic tales. The quartet works well in this string orchestra format. Fortes register with richness, and the quiet parts are all highly intimate. There are some really harsh, for Mendelssohn anyway, shrieks out of the vibratoless strings at some points. This movement often royals like the more dramatic of the Beethoven piano sonatas, thinking of the Passionatas last movement. The ending, though dramatic and written in sad, hysterical circumstances, really thrills, I thought. I thought it was thrilling. I didn't think it was horrifying, But that's our contemporary 21st century ears going, I guess.
Yeah.
We've certainly heard a lot harsher. The disc ends with another work by Caroline Shaw. This one's arranged by the conductor, Julian Azkoul. Not as cool as you, but Azkoul. Okay. It's called And the Swallow, and those are all lowercase letters. It's a choral setting of Psalm 84. It's an arrangement of that, so we're not hearing the words again, which is commonly read at the dedication of new churches. It has a lot of antiphonal textures in it and imitative effects. Always charming to hear, especially in a string orchestra or in a chorus. Azkoul sought to enhance these qualities in this arrangement by redeploying the players. So the cellos and basses are in the center, and the violins and violas on either side kind of like expand out. At the end, the singers in the original evoke the pattering of autumn rain in a hushed murmuring, and Azkoul says it's akin to the tremolo technique on bowed instruments, so he used that technique here to imitate that sound. This comes across as a bit of a lament after hearing the Mendelssohn. It's just where it's placed in the program. It's musically interesting enough to be enjoyable without the texts. It sounds almost like an Arvo Pärt string work in this arrangement. The very end featuring the tremolo stands out from the rest. So all in all, I liked this recording a lot. I tend to always want to hear the originals, though. So when I was listening to this, I was like, oh, I have to go back and hear the original the composer's original idea in the original instrumentation. It's got a rich upholstered sound from the United Strings of Europe, very pleasing to the ear. It just feels good listening to this recording. And it's an excellent recording, and there it is, classical music for this week, the first anniversary. Anything else?
No, I think you summed it up on that one. I enjoyed it.
Great sounding recording, as we said earlier.
All strings to me can sometimes not be, rich enough, but this was rich, especially the lower register. The bass comes through really nice. The strings are clear, but they're not harsh, which is, I think, difficult to do with mic placement and things.
Right.
You can get clear and harsh, or you can get sort of rich but dull. This gets both clear and rich, which,
those Beast engineers they're
really good.
They have their stuff.
Yeah.
I wish, I'm going to put out a request. I want Beast to re-record all of the Vaughan Holmboe symphonies on SACD using some of these new engineers. I bet they'd be amazing.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I love those works.
Yeah. But, a nice classical program.
Yeah, it was good.
First year anniversary.
It was a pleasing week of listening.
All right, that's going to take us over to the jazz side of things. And, well, I decided to stay with all new year releases, everything here.
Good for you. I got two New Year releases out of this. The Pratte was from late last year.
There's so much. I've had to cull my list. There's some things from the last quarter of last year that we're just not going to get to because there's so much interesting stuff coming out this month. So we've got a mix of things here, and we're going to start out with just a fabulous pianist, Bill O'Connell.
Yeah, this really amazed me. I took to him right away.
Now, all of his recordings are fabulous. Bill O'Connell originally studied at Oberlin Conservatory. He's been mostly based in New York City. I think now he teaches at Mason Gross School of the Arts. It's
where's that?
Part of Rutgers in Jersey. New Jersey. Yeah, in New Brunswick. But going way back, earlier in his career, he made a name for himself with Chet Baker and Sonny Rollins. And in the 80s, he worked a lot with Dave Valentine and got heavily into Latin music. So a lot of his recordings are Latin jazz. 2018, I think, Jazz Latin is recent. This is fabulous. We're going to listen to this one later.
I have yet to hear that one.
Yeah, we're going to listen to this later. A number of other great jazz recordings, Latin jazz recordings. He's got a great solo performance recording, just him. Also a duo recording with Steve Slagle that's really nice, just sax and piano. He's a real genius of piano jazz.
Yeah, Steve Slagle, who also has a new album coming out, right?
We're going to get that on a podcast soon, too.
Okay.
Anyway, this is his new one, A Change Is Gonna Come, on the Savant label, which features him mainly on piano, but he does sneak in a little Fender Rhodes underneath sometimes, which is interesting. We've got Craig Handy on tenor and soprano saxophone, who I saw one time with New Composers Octet in Osaka, and he's collaborated a lot with. A fabulous bass player, Lincoln Goins, here both on acoustic and electric bass. His electric bass work, fretless electric bass, is just awesome. And we've got Steve Jordan on drums and Pedrito Martinez on percussion. We start out with a Coltrane tune, Moment's Notice, but not like you've heard it before. Now this one comes.
That's the case with most of the covers on this album.
Most of the tunes, start and end with interesting versions. We get a heavy drum intro into some piano chords here. Comes over a heavy bass line by Goins, and then things lighten up and swing more for the melody, with Goins' kind of bass bouncing along. He always sets the rhythmic groove just as much or more than the drummers when he's playing. They switch back and forth between the heavier rocky rhythm and a more swinging feel throughout the tune, which is interesting. If you know Coltrane's music, this sort of become a jazz standard in a way. O'Connell surfs the changes in rhythm through his solo. He seems to have endless connected ideas. He can solo on and on, never run out of things,
I noticed that about him too. There was another, we talked about that with David Kikoski too. Like just people who just have ideas just that never stop. It's really amazing. He's one of these pianists.
Yeah, he's one of those. Yeah. He's got all kinds of runs, rhythmic figures, and he's a pianist too, where his left hand is doing just as interesting things with the chords he chooses and the rhythms. Goins gets a bass solo here, gets into the upper register, rapid repeated notes, and then Jordan is laying down some light but funky snare work underneath. Then O'Connell then trades off 8-bar phrases with Jordan for some drum beat fun. They come back to the melody and yet some more creative ideas from O'Connell. So the rhythmic variety, changing up the beats, makes this a really fresh and exciting version of this classic Coltrane tune.
I also thought the bass was really funky and street smart on this album, and then we even got there was a bass solo on it too. I was like, this is gonna be so cool, and it was really great.
Goins' bass work is awesome. Then we're gonna get some O'Connell originals here. 2, Locomotive. This is a chugging 3-beat bass line, setting the groove at the beginning. O'Connell lays down some chords to match it, and he tops it off with some bluesy phrases and trills. Pushes on with some drum breaks, solo break for O'Connell. Jordan keeps a light subdivided beat on the drum kit behind it. O'Connell's solo is really funky and fun on this tune, and he gives, again, a lot to listen to with his rhythmic left hand at the same time as he's, putting out all these melodic phrases and runs with his right hand, and interesting rhythmic figures there too. They vamp out on the bass and chords while Jordan gets some solo time on the drums, and especially featuring the toms. They repeat the melody again. The groove is heavy and infectious. 3, a song.
I like that rhythm. It's really kind of memorable.
3 is a song for our times, the Covet Blues.
Oh man! Well, how much of this do I have to hear? Well, the piece itself is really good, but Covet Blues. Oh boy, we're gonna still be hearing this 50 years from now, though.
I don't know. Probably not.
From the title, I don't know.
Craig Handy joins in on soprano sax for this original blues with some interesting harmonic diversions. O'Connell's up first for a solo. It's an intense one. Bluesy licks, runs, crashing chords. Jordan smacks out on the hits in support of the hot spots in O'Connell's solo. Handy's up next. He gets some wailing into the upper register. Bluesy licks and fun in and around the chords. This is one of those blues with altered chords that you can sort of snake out on. Piano and sax trade fours with the drums, and they come back for the bluesy head.
That's because it's the Covet Blues.
The Covet Blues, yeah.
It's not any ordinary blues.
Nope. Yeah.
Snaking out.
Get your mRNA
vaccine,
injection.
Right?
Yeah.
Injection. This is a better word, really.
4 is, in contrast to those blues, something to look forward to. The old Sam Cooke hit, A Change Is Gonna Come. And here we've got Handy on tenor, slow, slinky melody intro. Then O'Connell plays it out with ringing notes and a great touch for the pretty melody. Goines adds deep ringing bass notes and tasty fills in between O'Connell's gaps. Handy's back for a solo featuring slow, passionate lines and some reedy flutter into the work there. O'Connell comes back in with more brilliant piano runs and chiming notes, then back to Handy. So they're trading off with sections here, who finds a great shouting sax yelp to repeat. It's just one of those, he finds this figure, and it's too good to just play once for expression. Then he carries the tune to the end.
Yeah, this one is, you usually think of the Sam Cooke version of this song as being this real kind of like passionate, soulful sort of tune, but they don't do the soul here. They do it kind of in a laid-back way. It's kind
subtle.
of interesting. Yeah. It's more subtle, and like we said at the beginning, he's going to always take these familiar tunes in an unexpected direction, as is the case here.
Next, original tune, a dedication, Sun for Sunny. That's with a U in both words, Sun for Sunny, but this is for, with an O, Sonny Rollins, a la his famous Calypso tune, St. Thomas. And it's kind of, how can I say, the introduction and the tune are actually different. So the intro is a bit gospel-y, and so you think we're going in that direction, and then it switches off and you're off for your Calypso ride. And Handy takes the melody on soprano, then he passes it off to O'Connell. Goines is really ripping lines on the fretless electric bass here. Jordan keeps a busy beat on the drums, and Martinez comes in on percussion here, adding to the sort of Caribbean feel. Handy gets the first fiery solo, then O'Connell. It sounds like they all had like double espressos before they played this tune, because it's really fired up. Goines gets a crazy bass solo on this one. And then O'Connell comes back, opens it up for some percussion spots. Everyone has a lot of fun.
Yeah, I also like the old-timey rhythm that opens the piece, and it suddenly changes as soon as the alto sax comes in. That does a nice touch.
Yeah, I liked it. A little...
also unexpected.
Diversion, 6, another original, Enough is Enough. We get a slow drum and bass intro in 6/8 time, I think. O'Connell adds chords and runs before Handy comes in on tenor with the melody. It's got a minor modal bluesy feel that allows for a lot of harmonic exploration. O'Connell gets to exploring those harmonies in his solo. Handy works in some trills and squawks in his forceful playing.
Squawks, right.
Yeah. O'Connell's back for more and really hammers it out before letting Handy blow again. And he airs out his Coltrane laundry sheets in this one for that. Then there's a cool...
Well put.
3 beats to each slow piano chord passage that Jordan gets to jam out to, with contrasting rapid stick work before they repeat the theme. So get your little kind of modally feel fix on this one. 7 is called Sweet Peanut. Another original tune. This is a samba kind of feel. Real drive from Goines, pushing the electric bass. The drums and scratchy percussion fill out the Latin rhythm. And O'Connell dances through the melody. Sounds really inspired in his solo lines on this while he churns up the groove with his left hand. He also adds in some Rhodes electric piano for a different tone and getting more sustain with the left hand. It's not low. It's sort of in the middle range under what he's doing with his right hand. It's a little bit hidden in the mix there.
Right.
He seems to have endless ideas again here, finally passing it off to Goines for another bass solo. The attack of Goines' notes in this one really stand out. Super clear articulation on the bass. And then the ending has alternating chords and answering bass lines that bring it to a close. Track 8, another O'Connell original, A Prayer for Us. This is a slow gospel-y ballad. O'Connell's piano sounds really fabulous. Really wonderful piano sound here. He treats the melody wonderfully, gives it over to Goines, this time for a melodic and pretty acoustic bass solo. O'Connell's solo on this one is just a pure delight. He starts more delicately, but digs in. Jordan and Goines answer what he's doing by giving it more of a driving, slow swing. Then it settles down rather suddenly to a quiet place again, and they ease it out with a calm gospel-y ending. Just a very pretty piece. Track 9 is called Chaos. A busy drum beat and some sporadic piano tones start this one out before some bass patterns develop. Handy joins in on soprano. Initially, the big beats and bass seem to be in like a 5/4 kind of feel, but mid-melody it switches up to swinging 4/4. That could be the chaos of the title idea. Goines is on electric bass. He sets a heavy groove and then a walking swing throughout the 4/4 parts. The rhythmic change-up continues through the solo, so gives the players this kind of contrast to work with. O'Connell is up first to navigate the two rhythmic worlds, and Handy sails over it skillfully as well, and winds his way melodically through the chords, and then they work the melody once more before getting to the ending. So a rhythmically inventive and challenging piece. And we end up with the old standard, My Foolish Heart, who Bill Evans was fond of playing, but you've never heard it like this.
Oh, no, you have not.
It starts out with a huge backbeat. So you got a nice rocky backbeat on this by Jordan. O'Connell and Goines segment out the melody so that there's a phrase and then it just drops out, which leaves the drums to fill in for the backbeat rhythm in there. It sounds really cool. O'Connell's solo is matchingly rhythmic and funky. Goines laying down thick melodic electric bass underneath. He solos on straight through the tune, O'Connell, with loads of ideas again. He just hammers through the melody right through the whole thing. And there's cool drum gaps again when they get back to the melody. So this is a great recording. Shows O'Connell's piano skills, great taste, cool compositions, lots of variety. The musicianship is fabulous, and the overall mood, despite Covet Blues title.
Even Covet Blues is kind of upbeat, too.
Yeah, it's all upbeat. Puts you in a good mood. Great playing. And O'Connell's a masterful player. Be sure to check out this one and his other recordings, Jazz Latin, his solo recording, older things. It's fabulous piano playing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look back and listen to some of those older recordings. You've been telling me about them because I was impressed by this too, just the sheer number of ideas that comes out. I'm probably going to have to pick this one up. This would be the first jazz recording this year that I've picked up, actually.
Yeah, this is a good one to have. Yeah.
It's a big good one to have. And some of the older ones too, I think.
Yeah.
Very positive. Even the blues and the gospel numbers, they really are uplifting too, which is the way gospel especially should be. And also O'Connell's name is, unlike my picks this week, easy to pronounce.
Yeah.
I was very happy about that. O'Connell. Yeah. I think I grew up with someone named O'Connell.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of Irish names.
They didn't play the piano, though.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Okay. Up next, album that, like all Blue Note releases, gets a lot of pre-press, and you never know when it's going to actually be out.
Yeah.
Blue Note likes to tease and things. But...
it's like one of the Was guys who is it? Donald Was?
Donald Was, yeah.
Don Was, yeah, that was it, yeah. The owner. God, who came up with this plan? I don't like it.
Some things just come out. Some things you don't know they're out, and Blue Note, you'll be waiting for a long time.
Yeah, they're trying to build up, anticipation, but I don't know. I'd rather not just hear the record.
So this is a up-and-coming player who's gotten a lot of attention, so I figured I'd check it out. I've heard us playing on some other recordings. Immanuel Wilkins, as I said, on the Blue Note label, The Seventh Hand.
Yeah, this is a lot of people's jazz pick of the week, actually, I've noticed. Yeah.
So this is his second album after 2020's Omega. He's an alto saxophonist and composer. He's from Pennsylvania, around Philadelphia area. He came to New York to attend Juilliard. That's where he met the trumpeter, who also gets a lot of attention, Ambrose Akinmusire.
Yeah.
And he helped Wilkins get into the jazz scene there, and who would also meet Jason Moran, pianist, who took him out on tour. That was his biggest gig to date at that time. And from there, he's also worked with a range of artists, including Wynton Marsalis, Gerald Clayton, Aaron Parks, and others. And so here he is on this album, which is a concept album, The Seventh Hand. What does it mean? This is from his notes. The album consists of an hour-long suite. There's that word.
There's that word that puts us on our guard.
Comprised of 7 movements that strive to bring the quartet closer to complete vesselhood by the end, where the music would be entirely improvised, channeled collectively. From where? Well, continuing, the title is derived from a question steeped in biblical symbolism. If the number 6 represents the extent of human possibility, so number 6 is man in the Gospels, right? Hence 666, man becoming God. Right?
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the 7th hand, Wilkins wondered how it would sound to invoke divine intervention and allow the 7th element to possess his quartet. And
he certainly did that.
And this is his direct quote. These other quotes from the album notes. It's the idea of, not album notes, but release notes. It's the idea of being a conduit for the music as a higher power that actually influences what we're playing. So turning over the inspiration to God to play you. I've often heard, this idea in music. So what is it? Is it Emerson? Music heard so deeply that I don't know. I'm going to screw the quote up, but you become the music while the music lasts, I think.
Okay.
I've heard other musicians like Tom Harrell say, and anyone who's played music, when you're deep in that moment,
right,
that you feel like the music is playing you.
Right. I understand what he means. We've had this, I think everybody's had this sort of experience, at least fleetingly in their lives.
So that's what we're aiming towards. And
it's like when athletes are in the zone, they say in the zone.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where the album is aiming. And the final track is sort of the...
We just decided to be in the zone in the final track. I don't know.
So... Immanuel Wilkins, alto saxophone, Micah Thomas on piano, Daryl Jones, bass, Kweku Samburi on drums, and then we've got the Farafina Khan percussion ensemble on 1 or 2 tracks here. These names are, I don't know, I'm going to probably butcher them. Agie Keita Edwards, Yao Akoto, Jamal Dickerson, Adrian Somerville, all on African percussion. And also on 1 track, we've got Micah Thomas on mellotron. And flute added to 2 tunes, I think. Here, Elena Pinderhughes.
I like her a lot.
Yeah.
And she's good on this album as well. Yeah. She's always good, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So start out with the track Emanation. This begins with some skittering high alto melody over busy drumming. Wilkins breaks into his solo immediately out of the melody. He has a bubbling kind of sound here, which makes his ideas seem to float out, just sort of erupting. He gets intense connected lines, later digging into the lower register for a while. Thomas really hammers out the chords underneath. It's kind of unhinged piano going on this tune. Wilkins ends with a tag of the melody and then repeats a riff for a while Thomas gets his solo going. It's a very modern harmonic explosion of sounds breaking from the rhythm of his chords and the sort of amorphous drumming underneath. There's more of a swing groove that emerges now and then with John's walking a tight bass to Sumbry's cymbals. They bring them back to the melody, which flows right into the next track, hence the sweet nature, which is called Don't Break. This features African percussion under the spaced out riff lines of the sax melody, has kind of a 3-beat feel to it. Wilkins riffs some more up high over the drumming and adds piano. The piano adds an answer line to that. Everyone else drops out to feature the percussion, and then the percussion alone carries on to the end of the tune. Track 3 is Fugitive Ritual, Selah. This is a nice contrast to the previous pieces. It's a rich solo bass with an almost vocal quality opening over pretty light piano chords. Wilkins brings in the rubato melody supported on piano with a rich alto tone in the lower register. The drums have light brushing, just enough to push the relaxed waltzing beat that forms, and then gets to sticks a little later for some more fills as more intensity is needed. There's a lot of space between the phrases, which Thomas fills in sparingly with light chords and figures. It's mostly a composed piece. There's not much improvisation going on here, but it's pretty, and it's just, enough the way it is because the spatial quality is important to it. Track 4 is Shadow. It's a bass line set against the sax and piano melody that gets this off to a medium slow 4-beat feel. The melody has slinking and sliding downward lines to it. Wilkins weaves his solo around the pattern, often incorporating the lines from that melody, and Thomas adds improvised figures as well. Johns add melodic bass fills when the melody comes back.
This was like as repetitive as a pop tune, this one,
Yeah.
That theme
that theme comes
keep hearing
back,
it.
Yeah. Track 5 is called Witness. Here we get some mellotron, and we get Pinter Hughes' flute added in. It's an even piano chord progression that gives an intro to build on the alto and flute that come in with the mellotron and piano filling in that sound. The bass also moves in step on the progression, so everything is moving together throughout this whole tune. And the drums are faint with not much to do here. Pinter Hughes has some pretty flurries and exchanges with Wilkins on the flute here. And the static rhythmic motion lets you focus on the tones, and it creates a unique mood on this album. The bass drops out near the end, and it continues on to a pleasing final cadence.
I really want to hear Elena Pinter Hughes like as on her own, so a solo album as a band leader.
Featured, yeah.
Because I think she's always so good when I hear her on other people's records. I'd just like to hear her, what she would do. I bet it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Track 6, Lighthouse. Pinter Hughes is here on flute as well. Starts with a sequence of repeated piano chords. Busy drumming develops with Wilkins soaring on improvised lines against longer flute tones. So there's a contrast in the winds here. Wilkins continues blowing up a storm over drums and bass as the piano drops out for a while. Piano and flute join back in before Wilkins finishes up his solo. They return to the melody together while Sumbry gets in lots of blazing stick work underneath. Wilkins takes a breather for a bit. Well, the piano continues, then joins back in as Sumbry creates great washes of cymbal sounds. They reach a kind of satori, enlightenment moment, where the rhythm dissolves into a huge harmonic wash, and the flute blows out cries of enlightenment.
Is that what it says in the notes?
No,
that's what you came up with.
That's my description. Yeah,
that's impressive.
I had my little awakening at that point.
You missed your calling. You could have written the booklet notes for these things. Yeah.
Ram Dass and Russ. And that last sort of flow swells into the next tune.
Yes, it does. And I don't think this can be rightly called a tune.
Yeah. I don't know. Marathon. And
obstacle course.
Yes.
It depends. I didn't dislike this really, but it was
okay.
It was quite a challenge.
So this is where the hand of the Lord will come in, and this tune called Lift, which clocks in at 26 minutes and 22 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's longer than the rest of the album combined. It might be. Yeah. I didn't actually do the math, but...
Yeah. So here, this is basically free jazz, and, which is nothing new. It's been around since the 60s.
And I want to say I've heard harsher.
Yeah.
Certainly. Okay.
So what's going on here? This may be difficult for some listeners if you've never listened to something from free jazz before.
I do want to say it's quite a surprise coming after what we've just heard. It's a complete style change, and that was really what was so odd about it to me.
So, and you never know in these situations how much has been pre-decided earlier. When you say jazz is free, you're giving up some conventions of music, harmonic ideas, structure, form,
Right.
beat, and basically
Harmony.
yeah, the musicians are listening to each other and improvising everything.
Yeah.
Of course, jazz is based on improvised solos to a musical structure, and there are other things that can be changed along the way. The harmonies can be adapted, the rhythm, anything can change, but there's always a starting structure. With something like this, you don't know how much they're just freely playing. So what you're listening to is something that's being, birthed organically from the communications of the players. And in this case, the inspirational idea is they'll be channeling music from the creator. Well, what happens here? This is really hard to describe, so I'm not going to...
It turns out that the creation is kind of a messy business, and it sort of is. If you've ever done creative work yourself, it's really true. Yeah.
I'm not going to describe in great detail because it's too difficult to do.
Yeah, because it's all...
it starts out with kind of chaotic sax lines and piano dissonance emerges. The bass and drums add to the new forming world of sound that's coming here. Wilkins growls out phrases and strangulations over piano runs and clusters of tones. At around 4 minutes, a beat emerges in alternating bass tones. So it's getting these interval things. Just before 5 minutes, Wilkins has completely strangled the goose in the barnyard.
He does a lot of honking in this piece.
He takes a breather. So Thomas comes up for some freeform piano. Wilkins comes back about 7 minutes or so with some kind of subsonic tones on the alto. It's getting down into like a false register on it. More themes and woodwind assault occur after that. Around 19 minutes, there's a new quiet theme that's born out of the bass. And near the end, Wilkins works into some more high register shrieks. And things finally end up with bass overtones and the dust settles. So that's a little synopsis.
That's 26 minutes.
Yeah. There's a lot more going on in between that. It's hard to describe. If you're up, for...
It's really... Yeah, it's very episodic. It's sort of like you as a listener have to be in the moment and sort of just not trying to figure anything out, but just kind of let the music kind of flow past you like it's haiku.
Yeah.
It just kind of registers and it's gone.
Yeah.
Except that a lot of it goes on for quite a long time, so you have a lot of time to sort of absorb it. There are section changes, so they seem to have agreed on that certain things are going to happen that are going to change the direction. There's one bit where the piano changes the rhythm, but he may have just done that spontaneously. We don't really know.
So there is one
part where they all suddenly become silent, and I doubt that happened on its own.
When you listen to something like this, don't necessarily look for patterns or identifiable things. Look for interactions of how what one player plays leads to some sort of
how the other players pick up on
reaction,
it, change it, or
and
whatever.
what it develops into, rather than something like that. Don't listen to this if you have a spouse who mainly likes pop music, or that's all I can say.
If you're really if you're separating from your spouse and you want them out of the house, this would be a good way to achieve that. Depending on what kind of musical ear they have.
But overall, interesting release from Wilkins. He's, he's incorporating a lot of interesting elements in here with the African percussion, working up to some free form jazz. I like the contrast in he's not only doing very rhythmic things, he also has some tender lyrical sort of material that he's working with. I thought it's a adventurous release. I'll be interested to see what comes next from it.
The whole album was pretty sonically interesting as well. There was a lot of variety in it. It was all rather unique. I could see this is probably why musicians like this get on the Blue Note label and get so much press, because he's not breaking new ground, but he's doing something very different, let's say.
He's incorporating enough new and different things into to be very inventive, I think.
Inventive recording. That's good. a little bit of a challenge to listen to, too.
Yeah, Blue Note wants to have some artists that are pushing into new ground, and I think this recording does that.
I thought that was the Impulse label that wanted all those guys.
Yeah,
I thought that's what they formed for. I don't know.
Blue Note, you never know. I mean, they've kind of stretched outside of jazz too. Right, but I like to see them bringing in some, younger artists who are trying new things. So.
Right.
Now, this next one almost slipped under my radar, but I'm glad I got it in here. This is a nice contrast to the other pieces tonight, and this is on the Sunny Side label, which gets a lot of nice jazz releases, but this one didn't get much press. I just saw it on a list. Perhaps because I didn't know the leader, Guy Duvignau, and his new release called Baden. And Duvignau is a French-born Brazilian musician.
Oh, wow.
And
I just got the French part. I didn't know he's Brazilian.
Yeah, so, and Baden refers to the dedication of this album and sort of what it's centered around, which is the Brazilian guitarist and composer Baden Powell, who is a very influential composer and artist to musicians and listeners alike, and especially his ability that combined elements of jazz, classical, and Brazilian folk music into his own kind of almost his own genre, using a nylon string acoustic guitar. And he's loved around the world. So as I said, Duvignau was born in France but raised in Brazil. And now he's known as a bassist and composer, but he was drawn to the music of Powell through his Brazilian guitarist friends, who were all influenced by his unique way of playing. And Duvignau also studied guitar, and he was constantly told about the techniques that Powell used, and so that went to his interest in his repertoire and to take on a project to explore the music. And so here we've got some of Powell's kind of signature pieces, but also some of Duvignau's original works sort of inspired by his music. And what made me pick this up is the cast here. We've got the great Billy Drews on saxophones and a little bit of clarinet. I wish there was more, but we'll talk about that as we go along. On keyboards, Lawrence Fields, mainly on piano, but he's got a Wurlitzer electric piano in here as well. Duvignau on bass, Jeff Hirschfeld on drums. Ron Carter shows up just for one track.
Yeah, and he's pretty great on that track too.
And which is very unique.
As is Duvignau as well.
Yeah, and then what caught my eye when I saw this release?
Yeah, our eye really.
Yeah, Bill Frisell.
We both love him
on guitar on 4 tracks, and the instrumentation and arrangement on this album actually fits Bill Frisell's strong points, because it's a sparse, open type of recording. Which I think highlights Frisell's tone and his, ability to just place these little pearls of notes that go to other worlds.
Yeah, really beautiful.
So
on that electric guitar of his.
We start out with a piece by Baden Powell and Vinícius de Moraes, Canto de Oxana. This is got a bluesy bass intro that's joined by the piano on descending chords. Frisell adds his distinctive sound on some answering licks around the soprano sax that's on here.
You always know it's him.
Yep. The second part of the melody is more uplifting in contrast to the bluesy first. That's something we'll see again. Hirschfeld keeps a light kind of jazzy samba beat, and Frisell gets a bluesy solo with great tone and attacks. Drews, some nice soprano blowing time here, and the next time around with Frisell adding tasty answers to his lines. It settles down for a quiet ending with Frisell's muted, high-picked notes. Very tasty. Track 2, another by Powell and Vinícius de Moraes, Canto de Xangô. Bass and space piano notes in the intro create an atmosphere for the soprano sax to bring in the pretty minor melody. The bass matches the fast figures of the melody before launching into some really cool changing bass lines underneath. Fields takes a piano solo. It starts with interesting left-hand lines and moves into unpredictable rhythmic and melodic figures. The shifting bass and drum line are really appealing, and the melody comes back with the sax breaking up the piano solo. After about 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the beat stops, and things turn to some free exposition.
The soprano sax especially freaks out at this point.
Yeah. It only lasts for a minute or so, though, before the bass brings the groove back and they get around to the melody for one more turn. Track 3 is called Tristeza y Solidão, and sadness and loneliness. And boy, it sounds like that in a good way. The bass with space starts this out. When you hear it, you know what I mean. Frizzell comes in on top with tone and tremolo on this slow and sad tune. This is really beautiful.
Yeah.
The bass plays a mournful melodic line before Frizzell takes over the melody. The drums add just light textures, picking up a bit as the tune reaches its climax. It's a lovely interplay and a great showcase for Frizzell.
Yeah, especially Frizzell. I was going to mention him. He plays throughout on this one, and he sets a fantastic mood.
Very nice.
Really good.
For All Baden, so in other words, to Baden, this is a tribute by Duvignau. A pretty piano intro, joined by bass and drums. Bass and left-hand piano carry out a melody line as the song starts to take shape. Drews comes in on tenor here to lead things along. The rhythm eventually works up into a kind of light samba, but it stays very loose compared to what you normally think of as like a samba beat. Fields has an engaging piano solo over Duvignau's pulsing bass, and Drews gets an airy sax solo and continues through to the end. Last, we've got our next track 5, Blues Preta Asa Branca, which means black blues and white wing. And so the Asa Branca part is by Luis Gonzaga and Humberto Teixeira, and the blues part, the intro, is by Duvignau. And this is the one where Ron Carter joins in, and this is a bass duo.
And that's it. That's all there is. The two of them.
When have you heard this before? You don't hear it very often. So Ron Carter joins in only on this track. You got a bass duo, and they trade off walking slow blues and soloing throughout the tune. You almost never get to hear this. The effect is really cool. Around 4 minutes, the new melody of the Asa Branca begins, and then they continue trading off with backing each other in the solo until the end, which comes up with some fun overtone play on the bass.
Right. I found this whole idea to be very sexy. There's kind of there's a kind of real sensuality to the hearing these two play together. There's a lot of space between them, and just what they kind of, the feeling they brought out of these really low end instruments. Not low end meaning cheap, but low end meaning frequency low end.
Yeah. Very cool.
Was really great. This was a real highlight for me. It was surprising too. I didn't expect it to be.
I was waiting
as interesting
for some other instruments. Says, wait, this is just going to be two basses. So this is very cool. Track 6, Canto de Iemanja. This is a Powell original tune. It's a rolling Wurlitzer electric piano tones and bass make a bed for Drews to put some breathy tenor sax sounds over. It's very rubato and pentatonic sounding. At a minute and a half, the piano gets a rhythm going with a left-hand pattern, and then Hirschfeld gets a light cymbal beat matching that. Drews blows the melody with alternating sections with Duvignau's bass. At around 3 minutes and 30-some seconds, it dissolves. Just kind of fades out. And then Duvignau starts fresh with bass again. The others join back in. Drews gets a dreamy and rhythmic kind of Wurlitzer solo with... what did I say there? Fields gets a solo on the Wurlitzer. And then Drews backs that with lines there. Duvignau has a bit to play, and then it dissolves again It's like the tune starts and fades away. And then there's a kind of rolling keyboard tones that come back in for a misty final section that the others add to in kind of free time. Out of the rhythm.
That was a pretty startling sound, the Wurlitzer, because it's distorted. So it's got like kind of some effect on it. Another thing I noticed about this point is that the saxophone has been growing in size from the first track on the album. Yeah. Like it starts as a soprano, I guess, at the beginning. It's very high. Then you hear an alto. Now we're up to a tenor. And I was waiting for the full-size baritone section, but it never came.
Bass or something.
At least the baritone, but we didn't get to hear that. But it's kind of like this little baby, and it's growing as the album goes on.
But Drew's has this really, when we hear Latin music, we're reminded of Stan Getz always because of that, those iconic recordings. He has that kind of airy quality that is nice. It's sort of breathy, and also in his approach, he doesn't overplay. So it's a nice tone to have here. Track 7, this is by Baden Powell and Paulo Cesar Pinheiro, Refém da Solidão, Hostage of Loneliness. Another great title. It's a pretty ballad. The bass shares the melody over the piano with Drews on sax, and Hirschfeld does some nice brush work. Midway through, the tempo picks up the beat, and it gets some more Latin syncopation to it. And bass and sax get solos, and there's a long pause before piano ending. And track 8, also by Paul and Moraes, O Astronauta, I guess.
The astronaut, yeah.
Hey, I can speak Portuguese now. Yeah. Drews lightly bows.
I learned that O means the from all of those Madre Deus records that came out in the 90s.
Right. So on this one, Drews lightly blows the melody on tenor over bass before piano and drums join in on this swinging 6/8 ballad. This one has more of a standard jazz feeling to it. Duvignau gets a melodic solo first, floating freely over the meter. Drews is next and connects his solo back to the melody for a final go-around. Fields takes it to the end with some tasty, slowing piano lines.
This has kind of that feeling of those old space-age bachelor pad music from the 60s, right? Yep. It's all chilled out, you know.
The next track is Mata Adentro, a Duvignau original, Into the Woods. Frizzell is back on this one. He gets it started, and Drews joins in the melody on tenor. It's a very slow and sparse arrangement, which always highlights Frizzell's playing style. Drews blows a short, delicate solo with piano and guitar fills. It proceeds slowly, losing momentum with some extra muted plucking figures by Frizzell at the end. Track 10 by Powell and De Moraes again, Berimbau and Consolatio. A solo bass feature for Duvignau here starts with cool rhythmic bass tapping in the upper register for the intro with some kind of percussive effects. Duvignau gets into the lower bass register next, playing rubato with harmonic passages as well. He gets different rhythmic things happening on different strings at the same time, which is cool. And he works through a lot of different grooves. So this is his solo highlight on the album. Next, another tune written by Paulo in Pinheiro again, Lapinha, which I guess is a place. This is a tune. I looked at the lyrics of the original. There's something, when I die, bury me in Lapinha. So sort of like about this place. It's got a rubato sax and piano intro. It changes mood at about 1 minute and 15 seconds as Duvignau plucks out a fast high bass rhythm, and a new happy melody comes from the sax. Hirschfeld sits out on this tune. I guess there was enough rhythm happening with the instruments. Fields takes over the melody and some soloing as it shifts to this contrasting minor section. Drews returns for the major theme and then blows a happy solo, which the tune fades out on. So it's a tune with a real split personality. It's like it's like two different tunes merged together, but it's quite attractive in that kind of dual nature that it has. And then the final tune, this is Duvignau's original, dedicated for Frizzell and Baden, called for Bill and Baden. This one has a slow, slightly swinging melody shared by Frizzell and Drews on clarinet. Frizzell plays a fluid guitar solo over the kind of bluesy chord changes in this tune. Drews switches to soprano sax for his solo, so we don't get to hear the clarinet. He does a lot of exploring in the upper register and has some really fluid lines here. Fields gets a rhythmic and bluesy piano solo. They return to the melody with Drews on clarinet again. They stick on this kind of ascending riff, and Duvignau plucks out some curious high register tones on the bass, and they fade away before the riff slows, and then Frizzell adds a couple of overtones for
just these harmonics,
harmonics
at the end,
for
just
finishing
ends.
touch.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, this album has a unique character. It's nuanced, nice sparse instrumentation with lots of space. I don't know Paolo's music well. I've heard one or two of his tunes before, but this is an enjoyable exploration and presentation of it. Duvignau's bass work is great. Drew's breathy sax matches the atmosphere that's I think they want to bring across. And Frizzell's sound always gives that magical touch. And hey, another recording for Ron Carter's resume.
Right.
Just one track, but it's a cool one.
Yeah, but he's just keeps pulling ahead of Boris Kozlov there.
There you go.
Don't know.
So overall, I'm glad I caught this one. If you're interested in Brazilian music and want some tasty bass work and nice sax playing, and Duvignau's a very skillful bass player. But overall, I think you want this one for the vibe and atmosphere this music creates. It's really good.
Yeah. This album was far more, even with the Brazilian titles, this album was far more chilled out than I thought it would be. And it got more and more chilled out as it went. So actually, if you're looking for some late night listening that's going to wind up with you falling asleep in bed, this is probably a good choice to put on because it does get quieter and quieter as it goes. Whenever I hear like Brazilian music, I always think, this is what heaven has to be like. You hear that music. You don't hear harps. You hear like the bossa nova feel. You're on the beach. The girl from Ipanema is walking by, and she sees you and thinks you're cool.
Yeah, only in heaven, right?
Only in heaven, because that's not going to happen here. Yeah, at least not to me.
Maybe you got to go back to Florence.
Maybe, well, I don't know, and lose about 30 years from my life. Kind of be 30 years younger too would help. I don't know.
Well, at least we have good music.
We have that. We're going to have that for the rest of our life, I think. Yeah, that's good. Well, Russ, I don't want the party to end. It's our first anniversary. It's a special day. I just want to keep going here.
We're just getting started. Well, listeners, we wish you could join us. We've got some grass-fed steaks and some nice wine. We're going to join in with my missus, who's been patiently waiting outside the studio here for our return.
Yeah, for all the vegetarians out there, we've just got the grass that fed the cows.
Yeah. Our food's food.
Our food's food.
I think we have some olives and we're going to have some. Well, last time we had broccoli, and you said the Italians would have this with cheese, so we've got some cheese for the broccoli this time too.
Oh, with the broccoli, what we do is we kind of saute it in like olive oil with garlic and hot chili peppers. It's really good.
Well, you can guide the procedure, and I've got some.
Let's have a look.
Cheese for the top of it too. So.
Yeah, I like it. I like sautéed broccoli a lot. The way Italians, they just know how to do everything. It's so good. All right. Anyway,
so we're going to go out in style for episode 50, starting a new year of adult music.
Please celebrate our first anniversary upload, which will be February 15th. A lot of you will be listening to this episode on that date.
Right.
Okay.
And it's going to be there's so many new releases coming out. We're going to have a solid packed...
I think I've got 2 more weeks of 2021, and that's going to be like all 2022 from there. It won't just be 2020. I'll have some 2022 releases like in there, but now it's starting to explode in classical music, like from this Friday, the 11th, today. Right. And a lot of stuff is starting to come out now.
So a lot to look forward to. So episode 50... Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Thanks for listening. Again, please do like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. If you'd like to get in touch, we'd be happy to hear from you at Adult Music Podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. You can find us now on Facebook, too.
You can leave a comment there on Facebook, too.
Sure.
That would be nice, just under the episode or something. Just say what you like.
We'd like to know where you're from, what you're listening to. And we'll be back again for a new season next week.
Well, I think we're still on the same, never-ending season.
Is it? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
We could call it season 2.
We go year 2. Let's just say year 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Lots more to come.
Yep.
So we'll see you again next week for episode 51.